Hello, everybody. How's it going? First order of business, roll call. Make sure that you tell me where you're tuning in from. I always love to know where everybody is watching. So just comment where you're tuning in from. And yeah, you know, that helps with the algorithm. Again, I always got to do this at the beginning. I know. It's the whole... Well, actually, other YouTubers will nag you to subscribe. I don't really remember to even do that. But if you're new here, please subscribe. Thank you. So anyway, I see you guys are joining from Arizona, UK, Denmark, Montreal, USA, North Carolina. I don't know where No Way I Can't is, but we got one from Australia. Someone from Israel. You mean occupied Palestine? Serbia, Denmark, Michigan, New Zealand, London. This is amazing. See what I'm talking about? This is it. This is it. This is what I love to see. So, well, shall we get started with the news? I don't think I need these just yet, but Christ. Where to begin? You know, like every day there's something new, right? Some new war crime. It's never ending. So again, if you guys if this is your first time tuning in, please consider subscribing for independent journalism. And if you guys are subscribed, make sure you hit the bell thing. God, I really hate, like, I've become these annoying YouTubers who spend the first 5 minutes telling you like what they're going to talk about and telling you to subscribe before actually getting to the point. But it's a live stream, so you won't see it in the segment. Anyway, we got a couple of people who signed up on Patreon earlier, so thank you. I'm going to read you their names in a second once we get past the first segment. But yeah, thank you guys very much. So, let's start. All right. The United States have killed the leader of ISIS, the leader of Daesh. This is the second time, right? You might recall Donald Trump took out Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, and now they've taken out his successor. Now, there are a couple of things I want to go through with you. So just here's a headline from yesterday. ISIS leader killed in U.S. raid. And the propaganda effort is substantial because they're all celebrating the fact that, oh, the ISIS leader has been killed. But what they're not telling you is that they also killed, so 13 people killed in total, 6 of them children, 4 of them women, right? Here's a headline from CBS News, right? There's nothing about the civilians, like nothing at all. So the breaking, President Biden said in a brief statement on Thursday that Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurayshi, the current leader of ISIS, was taken off the battlefield. And then, of course, the New York Times, raid targeting ISIS leader came after months of planning. You know, they got to do the whole voodoo and be like, oh, this was really complicated, and it was a precision surgical strike, and there was lots of big brain, galaxy brain efforts behind this, and it was so good and so American, and no one else can do this, and we're the best, and we took this bad guy out. Remember, it's the whole neoconservative narrative. You got to have the good guys and the bad guys, right? And America is always the good guys, and everyone else is the bad guys. Now, I'm not going to argue with you. If you're going to talk about bad guys, ISIS are certainly there. But it's much more nuanced than that, right? Because what they try to do is do this pro-war propaganda that there are no civilians being killed, right? It's just the bad guys. And I want to play you Joe Biden speaking about this, okay? So I don't recall the exact timestamp where he mentions the civilians, but let's take a listen.
He was responsible for the recent brutal attack on a prison in northeast Syria holding ISIS fighters, which was swiftly addressed by our brave partners in the Syrian Democratic Forces. He was the driving force behind the genocide of the Yazidi people in northwestern Iraq in 2014. We all remember the gut-wrenching stories, mass slaughters that wiped out entire villages, thousands of women and young girls sold into slavery, rape used as a weapon of war. And thanks to the bravery of our troops, this horrible terrorist leader is no more. Our forces carried out the operation with their signature preparation and precision, and I directed the Department of Defense to take every precaution possible to minimize civilian casualties. Knowing that this terrorist had chosen to surround himself with families, including children, we made a choice to pursue a special forces raid at a much greater risk than to our own people, rather than targeting him with an airstrike. We made this choice to minimize civilian casualties. Our team is still compiling the report, but we do know that as our troops approach to capture the terrorist, in a final act of desperate cowardness, he, with no regard to the lives of his own family or others in the building, he chose to blow himself up, not just to the vest, but to blow up that third floor.
Okay, so you got what Biden is saying? He's saying that the guy blew himself up. And that's how the civilians were killed. That's what they're saying. Okay, so apparently he just woke up with a suicide vest on him he gets up every day and he puts on a suicide vest just in case there's going to be there. But he's not saying that. Not a vest. He's saying the whole floor was blown up. What does that mean? He had C4 under the carpet or in the couch? What is that? The whole floor was blown up. And take a look at this, because here, this is from a reporter from the Washington Post, okay? And she says that aboard Air Force One, because Air Force One is the presidential jet, the private jet of the United States president, and they have a room, they'll let the journalists on board with them. And so she's saying aboard Air Force One, a reporter asked White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki for evidence to back up the claim that Qurayshi detonated a suicide bomb. Psaki asked whether skeptics think the U.S. military is, quote, not providing accurate information, and ISIS is providing accurate information. The reporter did not back down. But the U.S. has not always been straightforward about what happens with civilians, she said. And that is a fact. That is a fact. That is an absolute truth, and we'll get to that in a second. And then Jen Psaki, so the White House spokesperson, she responded on Twitter and she said, context here is pretty important. I answered with below, which you did not include. And then she says, so this is a transcript from what Psaki said on the plane in response to this question of, did Qurayshi actually blow himself up? And she said, well, as you know, there's an extensive process that the Department of Defense undergoes. The president made clear from the beginning, at every point in this process, that doing everything possible to avoid civilian casualties was his priority and preference. Yeah, but that doesn't mean anything. She's just saying that Joe Biden wanted to avoid civilian casualties, allegedly. Yeah, but you're not answering the question, did the guy blow himself up or not? How did those children, the women, how did these civilians die? And so, if you guys recall, in August, when the U.S. was leaving Afghanistan, or let's say withdrawing the bulk of their troops, the CIA is still hanging around there. But back in August, after this attack on Kabul airport, Biden carried out a drone strike on ISIS-K, right? And for weeks, they lied about it. They lied and they said, no, there were no civilian deaths. We don't know of any civilian deaths. And that's it. It was just ISIS-K and they're terrorists and we got them. And then, of course, the mainstream media for once did their job and actually called out the Biden administration, and they did an investigation and said, no, this is not true. You killed a bunch of civilians. Only civilians. You didn't kill anyone from ISIS. The guy that they were following all day was an aid worker. He and his family even had a visa to go to the United States. Correct me if I'm wrong. In any case, he was completely innocent. He had nothing to do with ISIS. And this is what's funny, because they were tracking him all day, right, with drones, and saying that, he was he was handling explosives, which turned out to be buckets of water. And they can see like explosives from a drone all the way in the air, but they can't see the children that were next to him when they blew him up. So they murdered an entire family, the Ahmadi family, and covered it up. So why would you trust the Biden administration not to lie about this now? It's not even just Biden. It's every administration. George Bush, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden. They all kill civilians and lie about it. Why do you think Daniel Hale is in prison? Because he blew the whistle on the U.S. Air Force, just obliterating civilians. And during a period of a couple of months, 90% of the people that were killed in U.S. drone strikes were civilians. They know this. And I've reported on this as well, how in Pakistan and Afghanistan, they would go after someone who's from the Taliban or the Pakistani Taliban, and they would, every time they would think that they got this guy, and then turns out they just blew up tons of civilians. Even at a funeral, they even drone strike a funeral of someone that had been previously killed in a drone strike. Like it's leagues of evil and depravity. It's unbelievable. And so now, they're saying that they've killed this ISIS leader, and they're trying to cover up the fact that they murdered these civilians. I don't know that this guy actually blew himself up. They don't have any proof. They don't have any proof of this. We're just supposed to take their word for it, like the other times when they were caught lying. So look at this also. Look at the propaganda. It's just, they post a picture. The White House Twitter account posts a picture saying President Biden, Vice President Harris, and members of the president's national security team observed the counterterrorism operation responsible for removing from the battlefield Abu Ibrahim al-Hashimi al-Qurayshi, the leader of ISIS. And there's, Biden is doing this very, giving the strong stare, and they all have this concerned look on their faces, like, what? You just blew up a bunch of civilians. What's so brave about that? This is just, it's literally just pro-war propaganda. And I think Glenn puts it quite succinctly, Glenn Greenwald. He says, these kinds of staged photos are intended to be pornographic and stimulate this kind of arousal. That more women and children were killed than anyone else doesn't at all dampen the excitement. If anything, it intensifies the high. Absolutely true. I couldn't have put it better myself. This is exactly what it is. It's pro-war pornography. And, they think that they're brave and they're doing some kind of a huge favor to the world. And it's disgusting. Honestly, it's disgusting. Here is where he was killed. Where this raid took place, right? So in Atma, which is, interestingly enough, in northern Syria on the border with Turkey. Okay, I think this tweet narrows it down quite succinctly. Says, the house where the leader of ISIS was killed by the raid is located in a security square in northern Syria. It's 150 to 200 meters from a checkpoint for Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, also known as HTS, is Al-Qaeda, basically. 400 to 500 meters from a Turkish police station and around 1 kilometer from a Turkish military post. Now, why is this so significant? What does this mean, that he's in northern Syria on the Turkish border? Like, what does that mean? We know what it means geographically. What does it mean politically? What does it mean about what he's doing there? Well, the entire war, during the war on Syria, they've been pushing this narrative, the mainstream media, that no, there are moderate rebels. You do have people who are opposing the Syrian government, who are not from ISIS, who are not from Al-Qaeda. They're moderate rebels, and these are the ones that we must give weapons to and training and logistical support, and they did, right? The British, the Americans, they've given these moderate rebels everything. And right now, the Syrian government has taken back most of the land in Syria, right? But one place that is not under control of the Syrian Arab army, and which is under the control of these moderate rebels, is Idlib. So Idlib is a governorate, basically a province in Syria, and it's also a city, right, in Idlib. So this whole province is under control of Turkey, which is a NATO member, and these militias like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, which is Al-Qaeda. It was al-Qaeda, and then they changed it to al-Nusra, and then to Hayat Tahrir al-Sham. You can rebrand it as many times as you like. It's still al-Qaeda. And so, like I said, HTS is there, but in the media, they don't tell you that. They tell you that this is a rebel stronghold. Yeah, but what kind of rebel? So you're telling us that there are moderate rebels, and they're not like al-Qaeda, and they're not like ISIS. But every time that you kill an ISIS leader, he's exactly where these moderate rebels are. Why would he be there if these groups are in opposition to each other? Why are the moderate rebels giving amnesty and hiding these ISIS leaders if they have nothing to do with each other? Because when they killed Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, they killed him in Idlib. And right now, this guy, they also killed him in Idlib. Isn't that weird? Isn't that weird? What a coincidence. Out of all of Syria, throughout the whole country, and even Iraq, because he's Iraqi, remember? Qurayshi. And he's just so happens to be exactly where these moderate rebels are. Oh, wow. You guys are funny. You guys are funny. You're really funny. And so, again, let me just show you this article from Al Jazeera. 6 children and 4 women among 13 people killed as U.S. Special Operations Forces launched a raid in Idlib province, first responders say. And that's what they're not telling you, right? So this is, again, very interestingly enough, this is the exact same story they said about Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, right? When he was killed by Trump. They also said that he blew himself up at the last second. And now they're saying the same story again. He blew himself up. Yeah, but you expect us to trust you? We have no way of verifying that at all. You might as well. They could have easily blown all of these civilians to bits, and now they're just pinning it on him, right? Like how can we actually verify that? The reporters on Air Force One are asking them, like, is this true? And their response is, well, maybe you're just, maybe you just trust ISIS too much. Like, that's the response. Reporters are asking the White House, is it true that this ISIS leader blew himself up? And the White House response is like, what, you trust ISIS over us? Just answer the question. Like, no one, that doesn't mean you support ISIS. It just give us the truth. But they can't do that, of course, right? They can't do that. Because if you question the official U.S. narrative, then you are a Russian agent, and you are an ISIS supporter, you are a supporter of Saddam Hussein, you're a Putin puppet, an Assadist, etc., etc., etc. A whole load of diarrhea, right? But not the truth. They're not interested in giving you the truth. And so, once again, you see how in Idlib, so like I said, most of Syria has been taken back by the Syrian Arab army. Of course, the Golan Heights are still occupied by Israel since 1967. Everything here in Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor, so northeastern Syria, is occupied by the United States and the Kurds. And then here you have Idlib, which is under control of Turkey, and those other jihadist militias, the Takfiri terrorists that are backed by Turkey. And of course you have 2 groups, for example, Faylaq al-Rahman and Jaish al-Islam. These were in Damascus. They used to be a couple of meters from where my cousin lives in Jobar. And they found themselves all the way in Idlib, right? Because when the Syrian government would defeat the terrorists in a battle, they would ship them off in these green buses to Idlib, right? So you put down your arms, you get to live, and you go to Idlib. And now you have 20,000, 30,000 jihadist fighters there. 5,000 of them are actually Uyghurs, right? So again, apparently these are Syrians. They want you to believe that it's a civil war, but you have thousands of people from China who are in Idlib. You have thousands of people from Tunisia, from God knows where, all over the world, who are coming in and trying to overthrow the Syrian government. But yeah, apparently it's a civil war. So. And it's an uprising of the Syrian people, right? They try to frame it as if like the entire Syrian people is in opposition. So I also want to point another thing out to you. Do you know how they always say that, like, what is one of the biggest things you hear about Russia and about Syria in the news? What do they always tell you about Bashar al-Assad? They say he's bombing civilians, right? They say that Russia and Syria are bombing hospitals, They're using barrel bombs. They just kill people indiscriminately, right? That's the whole argument right now about how the counterterrorism is being waged. That's the biggest thing you hear. Oh my God, the Russian Air Force bombed this hospital, right? The Syrians are using helicopters and dropping barrel bombs. The whole point of that is what? Is that they're accusing Syria and Russia of killing civilians indiscriminately while they're fighting terrorists. But apparently, when the United States kills civilians indiscriminately while fighting terrorists, it's okay. Apparently, that's okay, right? As long as you wear an American flag when you're killing Syrian civilians, then it's okay. And apparently, it's your business to be in Syria, even though it's not your country. But the Syrian army in Syria, in its own country, fighting foreign terrorists, is not allowed. That's not allowed. And that's that makes you a war criminal and all sorts of things. But that standard doesn't apply to the US for some reason, right? They can kill civilians all over the planet. It's not just Syria. This is the whole war on terror, right? They've always done this. They always kill tons and tons and tons of civilians in the name of fighting terrorism. And that's how they justify it, right? The ends justify the means. They could say, well, we're just getting the bad guys. So you can't hate us for killing all the civilians. It was collateral. Wow. So once again, you have dead Syrians. And again, I don't even keep in mind, I have no clue who these people are. I don't know their names. I don't even know if they're related to the Qurayshi, as they're saying, as they're claiming. I'm not interested in that. That's not my point. The point is that the United States is coming to the other side of the planet and killing Syrian civilians, and then claiming that it's just collateral, it's acceptable. And as a matter of fact, they're not even talking about it, right? They're saying it's his fault, Qurayshi's fault, that he blew himself up. I mean, you could even look at it as some people might look at it as a cause and effect. Like, if you hadn't done this raid, he wouldn't have blown himself up. I don't know if I buy this story. The rational thing is not to believe the U.S. government, because they have a giant track record of lying about civilian deaths under every administration. So why would you trust them? And this is not even something that just dates back to the war on terror. Look at Vietnam. Look at what they were doing in Vietnam. Look what they did in North Korea. I don't know if most Americans know this. I don't know if most people who are watching right now know this. When the United States was in Korea, it killed 20% of the population. 20% of the population. In 3 years. They ran out of targets to bomb. They bombed everything. So don't come here and tell me that the US doesn't bomb indiscriminately and they have surgical strikes. This has been proven to be a complete myth. There's no such thing as surgical strikes. Half the time they don't even know what they're firing at. How many times have they've killed a terrorist in Pakistan and then it turns out he's still alive? The interior minister in the new Taliban government in Afghanistan, he was reported to have been killed by the Americans several times. Well, he's obviously not dead, so who were they killing? Definitely not terrorists. So this angers me. And then, they come in and act like that that the U.S. is somehow justified in doing this. Dude, the terrorists that the United States kills are usually working for the United States, right? When they went into Afghanistan to get bin Laden used to be one of their buddies, right? They used to give him money, and they gave money to his to Zawahiri, right? All of these mujahideen who later went on, in Peshawar and in Pakistan and Afghanistan to form al-Qaeda. Many of them were on the payroll of Uncle Sam at one point. And interestingly enough, I'll tell you another thing. When we talk about this ISIS leader being killed, so Qurayshi and Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, let me tell you an interesting fact. Both of these guys were in U.S. detention at one point. So there's a camp in Iraq called Camp Buka, and this is where the U.S. used to detain all of these al-Qaeda fighters, and it basically ended up being a breeding ground for ISIS, right? So you had, like I said, Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, who was the former leader of ISIS, which Trump killed. He was in there. If I'm not mistaken, Zarqawi was in there as well. But we're talking about ISIS. So Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi and also the guy they killed yesterday, Qurayshi. So I don't know what was going on there. If I didn't know any better, I would say that at best, that was a cataclysmic failure, because they detained these guys and just turned them into a next generation of terrorists. And at worst, if I didn't know better, again, I'm just speculating, but I think I have good reason to speculate this given the U.S. history, I would say they were on Uncle Sam's payroll. And that's not a far-fetched thing at all, because bin Laden himself, al-Qaeda, all of these people who were instrumental in forming al-Qaeda, they were on Uncle Sam's payroll at one point. And the United States has a habit of doing this. It's very much like the mob. So, they'll buddy up with someone and use them to advance their agenda. And once then they're done with them, they'll finish them off, right? So once they're done using them, they'll kill them. It's just like the mafia. The United States, they gave Saddam Hussein chemical weapons, right, to use against Iran. They used him to attack Iran. And then, once they had no more use for him, you saw what they did to Saddam Hussein. They invaded Iraq. They everything. They ruined it. Twice, right? The Kurds. The United States is partnered up with the Kurds in Syria, claiming like, yeah, we support you and you're our allies and all of this stuff. But you saw what Trump did. He pulled out of northern Syria. He's still he pulled out is the wrong term. He basically reshuffled the troops inside Syria. He moved them from northern Syria to northeastern Syria to the oil fields. And still with the Kurds, but you had all these people in Congress saying, oh my God, how can you leave Syria? You need to keep occupying that country because of our allies, the Kurds. Well, obviously, that didn't matter so much, right? So you might be friends with the United States one day, the next you're not going to be. Because when they have no more use for you, they screw you. And same thing with the Mujahideen, with al-Qaeda. Once they were done using them to fight the Soviets, they turned their sights on them. So you see, the United States has a history of doing this kind of stuff. It doesn't have, allies. It has interests, I think, as Kissinger said. But again, I'm just speculating here. At the end of the day, what I will say, though, is the United States invaded Iraq. It destabilized Syria, and it created a power vacuum. If the United States hadn't invaded Iraq and gotten rid of Saddam, we wouldn't have ISIS. ISIS would not exist. That doesn't mean Saddam Hussein is a saint. It means that the United States does more harm than it does good, right? So as a result of destabilizing Syria, it spilled over into there as well. And when the United States says, oh, we're going to go and kill the ISIS leader, you created ISIS. You fucking created that. And this is how the United States keeps the money coming in for the weapons manufacturers. They create the same terrorists, which they later on fight. And that's why they can keep perpetual war happening and perpetual profits, right? It's an endless war. It's like the war on drugs, the war on terror. It's just endless. And the profits are endless too. These companies make trillions, from bullets to boots to tanks, you name it. There's tons and tons and tons of money being made. So these people, they don't care about the destruction that it does to Syria. They don't care about the civilians they killed. They always have an excuse, right? There's always an excuse to go bomb a country, to kill the civilians, and it's always justified. The United States can never do any wrong. It's always right. And if you question that, you're an ISIS supporter, you're a Saddam supporter, you're an Assad supporter, yada, 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 right? Uncle Sam is always right, and anyone who opposes Uncle Sam is always wrong. That's it. Shut your mouth. So that's the game. That's the game that they play here. They use these terrorists, they create these terrorist groups, or they give rise to the conditions that create these terrorist groups to help advance their foreign policy, their imperialism. And then once they move forward, they get rid of them, right? They tie up loose ends, as the mob would say. And so I'm not very impressed by this raid. They'll just find another leader for ISIS. Maybe in the future, it's better not to invade the Middle East and give rise to groups like ISIS in the first place. If you really want to fight terrorism, why would you destabilize countries and allow terrorists to flourish? You're obviously not interested in fighting terrorism if you're helping create those terrorists. You're obviously not interested in terrorism when you're fucking financing al-Qaeda and all of these other offshoots, these 50 flavors of jihad inside Syria. We know that the US and its allies are funding these terrorist groups. It's a fucking fact. Not just funding them, sending them weapons, all kinds of support. It's a fact. They're not interested in fighting terrorism. That's bullshit. You are such a dunce if you take that seriously. You're a dunce. So, again, I'm not impressed. Good riddance. But, you know, I mean, I don't like making fun of the dead, but my point is that this is not going to fix any terrorism issues because they're just going to find another one to replace him. And, you know, this allows the United States to keep going with this perpetual war. Oh, look, there's this other guy. Now we got to go in and kill him. Oh, it's not him. We blew up 50 civilians. Doesn't matter. We'll go get him next time. And it goes on and on. Just look at what happened in Afghanistan. Look at what happened in Pakistan. Look at these raids by Task Force 9, right? This secret unit that bypasses all kinds of safeguards. They just pretend they're under fire. They pretend it's self-defense. And then they just blow up civilians. So the definition of a terrorist, it doesn't even mean anything because you have these US troops, these units, not just US ones, Australian, British, SAS were doing this as well. You know, they go into Afghanistan, they go into Syria, they go into Iraq, and they claim they're under fire. They make it up. They make it all up. They even plant weapons on bodies to justify executing people. It's a sick, vile culture. And it has nothing to do with security. It has nothing to do with fighting terrorism. That is terrorism. You know, if you ask me what the United States is doing, what the United Kingdom is doing, what Australia are doing to the world, you know, when they invade Afghanistan or when they're going to Syria or Iraq, that is terrorism. It's state terrorism. When you kill millions of people and you displace millions of people, that's terrorism. It's disgusting. Here's a good tweet. Another dead obscure terrorist leader. Time to start 2 stopwatches. The first counts down how long until the official story about the operation turns out to be bullshit. The second, shorter clock, is the time it takes to generate a new obscure leader of the terrorist group. And that's exactly it, right? Before you know it, they'll have some other Abu something, you know, pretending to be a caliph, and then they'll go in and kill him and kill a bunch of civilians, and it just keeps going, right? They think they can justify it that way. And of course, it's just like Zero Dark 30, that film about killing bin Laden. You know, they fetishize it. They make this these acts of war, of murder, into some sort of myth to sell to the public, right? And it's so disgusting. I mean, again, we're not going to pity, you know, Osama bin Laden and these creatures from ISIS, but my point is that what the Americans are doing is that they try to sell this pro-war propaganda, right? They'll make movies out of it. Go look at the comment section on Twitter under Biden's tweet that, oh, we got this guy from ISIS. It's unbelievable, right? There's like the people there have no clue that there are civilians who've been killed. And they're just like, oh, God bless America. God bless you. Thank you so much for protecting our freedom. What the fuck are you talking about? What freedom? What business do you have in Syria? What a sick situation, honestly. So disgusting. And then, like I said, the press will sell it for them. You know, oh, this took months of planning. It was so brave. There's nothing brave about that. You know, Biden calls it brave, our brave service men and women. You're not serving anyone except Raytheon. You're not serving anyone except the CIA. There's nothing brave about killing a bunch of civilians, even if you tell yourself that, oh, it's a terrorist that we got. No, you're the terrorist at this point. There's no difference between you and the target. It's really upsetting. It's really upsetting seeing how the disregard for human life. And like I talked about the other day, how they bombed this dam in Syria. They used one of the biggest bombs they have in the military to bomb civilian infrastructure, which is a war crime. They almost killed, again, if that dam had overflowed, if the bomb wasn't a dud, it was a dud. It didn't go off. If it had gone off, more Syrians would have been killed than in the entire war put together. This is the kind of recklessness that they perpetuate, and then that they perpetrate, and then they have the nerves to accuse Russia and Syria of being indiscriminate. Unbelievable hypocrisy. So, thank you, Lillian, for the super chat. It's a lovely sticker. I think someone's playing a trumpet. I don't play a trumpet. Never played a trumpet, but I do need to start playing guitar again. I'm neglecting it. You have to keep practicing, right? Thank you in any case, Lillian. I appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who's watching on Rockfin. Again, if you just tuned in, please make sure you hit the like button because it helps with the algorithm. And we'll move on to the next segment that I wanted to get to. If you'll just allow me 1 second. I just need to get some water. I'll be right back. Don't go anywhere. Get yourself something to drink as well. And I'm going to put up the donation screen in the meantime. And we got a lot of stuff to cover. I'm very excited. So we'll be right back in a second. All right. All right, we're back. Thank you so much to Lukazi for the generous donation on YouTube. I appreciate it very much. Again, thank you to everyone who's supporting the show, supporting independent media, whether it's this channel or other channels. We need you guys to thrive, to keep on doing this, and I really appreciate it very much. Let's move on to the next segment, shall we? Let me pull this up for you. Okay. Again, more disinformation. It's funny how the largest people, the loudest voices talking about disinformation are corporate media outlets who literally lie to kill people for a living. It's disgusting, honestly. So, let's start with the latest scandal. The United States is, again, claiming that Russia is ready to invade Ukraine at any moment. And this is their latest, the latest monkey business that they've conjured to try and convince you that Russia is certain to invade Ukraine. So now they're saying, the U.S. intelligence community, that Russia is going to stage a false flag operation, that they may create a video to, fabricate a pretext for war. So basically that the Russians, they're just on the verge. They haven't done it, but they're just about to film some fake video where Russians or Russian-speaking people have been attacked by Ukraine, so they can start a war with Ukraine and justify a war with Ukraine, right? A false flag operation, because it's pretending it's someone else. So there was a very interesting exchange between, I think it was Matt Lee from the Associated Press and Ned Price, who's the State Department spokesperson, right? So Matt Lee is a reporter, and he was asking Ned Price about this so-called intelligence. And they had a very interesting exchange. Let's watch it together.
Thanks. Okay, well, that's quite a mouthful there. So you said actions such as these suggest otherwise. Suggest meaning they suggest they're not interested in talks and they're going to go ahead with some kind of what action are you talking about?
One, the actions I've just pointed to. The fact that Russia continues to engage in disinformation campaigns.
You made an allegation that they might do that. Have they actually done it?
What we know, Matt, is what I have just said, that they have engaged in this activity, in this planning activity. But let me because obviously this is not the first time we've made these reports public. You'll remember that just a few weeks ago.
I'm sorry, made what report public?
If you'll let me finish, I will tell you what report we made public. We told you a few weeks ago that we have
God, it's so awkward.
Information indicating Russia also has already prepositioned a group of operatives to conduct a false flag operation in eastern Ukraine. So that, Matt, to your question, is an action that Russia has already taken.
It's an action that you say that they have taken, but you have shown no evidence to confirm that. And I'm going to get to the next question here, which is, what is the evidence that they... I mean, this is like crisis actors, really? This is like Alex Jones territory you're getting into now.
Oh man, what a roast. What a roast. Right? So he's basically saying you're a conspiracy theorist. You're getting into Alex Jones territory. You're just making it up. And let's keep watching. This is a great roast.
What evidence do you have to support the idea that there is some propaganda film in the making?
Matt, this is derived from information known to the U.S. government, intelligence information that we have declassified. I think you know.
Okay, well, where is it? Where is this information?
It is intelligence information that we have declassified.
Well, where is it? Where is the declassified information?
I just delivered it.
I love his responses. For those of you who don't know, Ned Price is a former CIA man, and he speaks like one. It shows. And so basically he's asking him, well, where is this report? Well, it's a report that, we just know the Russians are doing this. And can you show it to us? Can you give us the report? No, it's declassified. Well, yeah, but where is it? I just gave it to you. Incredible.
No, you made a series of allegations and statements.
Would you like us to print out the topper? Because you will see a transcript of this briefing that you can print out for yourself.
That's not evidence, Ned. That's you saying it. That's not evidence. I'm sorry.
Did you see his reaction? Christ. It's nice seeing a reporter actually do their job for once. It really is refreshing.
What would you like, Matt?
I would like to see some proof that you you can show that
Matt, you have been
that shows that the Russians are doing this. Ned, I've been doing this for a long time.
I know, that was my point. You have been doing this for quite a while. You know that when we declassify intelligence information,
right. And I remember,
we do so.
You've been doing this for quite a while. You know better than to ask me real fucking questions. Stop busting my balls, Matt. Stick to the script.
In a means, we do so with an eye to protecting sources and methods.
Kabul is not going to fall. I remember.
Did you see what he said? Listen behind Ned. You can hear what Matt's saying. He says,
when we declassify intelligence
That's
information,
right. And I
we do so in a means.
He said, I remember the WMDs in Iraq. Shit, I do too. I'm old enough to remember that. And then he said,
we do so with an eye to protecting sources and methods.
Kabul is not going to fall.
Kabul is not going to fall. You remember that too? Oh no, don't worry. Like, Kabul is not going to fall. It's fine. It's fine. They're just like overrunning it with the Taliban a few months ago. He's right. I also, you guys come here and you lie about, astronomical lies that Iraq has WMDs. How do you make such a fucking allegation? Where do you get off saying that? And then they just go to war and think people are going to forget about that. No, a lot of people don't trust you because you lie. You make up the biggest lies on earth and start the biggest wars on earth. So no, you're going to do this again? It's the same thing, right? I also drew comparisons with it. I told you guys that, Russia's about to attack any minute. It's just like Iraq is 45 minutes away. Saddam is 45 minutes away from mounting a biological attack, right? Like, he's Superman. He has these mobile trucks. I'm serious. This is what they said. He has these mobile biological weapon manufacturing trucks. Like, it's like the drive-in. You just pull up and cook up some, bubonic plague in the back and launch it on London. I mean, the most insane shit, right?
I remember a lot of things. So where is the declassified information other than you coming out here and saying?
Matt, I'm sorry you don't like the format, but we have declassified.
It's not the format; it's the content.
I'm sorry you don't like the content. I'm sorry you are doubting the information that is in the possession of the U.S. government.
No,
what I'm telling you is that this is information that's available to us. We are making it available.
Listen, Matt, I'm sorry that you are doubting the information provided you by the state. Do not insult the state, Matt.
To you in order for a couple reasons. One is to attempt to deter the Russians from going ahead with this activity. Two, in the event we're not able to do that, in the event the Russians do go ahead with this, to make it clear as day, to lay bare the fact that this has always been an attempt on the part of the Russian Federation to fabricate a pretext.
Yeah, but you don't have any evidence to back it up other than what you're saying. It's like you're saying, we think we have information the Russians may do this, but you won't tell us what the information is. And then when you're asked...
That is the idea behind deterrence, Matt. That is the idea behind deterrence. It is our hope that the Russians don't go forward with this.
You say, I just gave it to you. But that's not what...
You seem not to understand. You seem not to understand the idea of deterrence. We are trying to deter the Russians from moving forward with this type of activity. That is why...
Christ almighty, what does that even mean? You don't understand the idea of deterrence. He's not asking you why you're releasing this report. He's asking you, is the report real? Can you show me evidence that it's real? But you don't seem to understand the idea of deterrence, Matt. What the fuck are you talking about? He's never been challenged, right? So he has to stick to the script. Yes, but you don't understand. The computer says no. It is his whole argument for this is true is trust me, bro. Just trust me, I just told you. Right? It's like, hey guys, I found $50 billion over there at the end of that rainbow. Can you show it to us? No, just trust me. I just told you. That's it.
Why we're making it public today. If the Russians don't go forward with this, that is not ipso facto an indication that they never had plans to do so.
But then it's unprovable.
Right? He's basically saying, look, just because we don't have evidence of it, it doesn't mean that the Russians aren't doing it and they might not do it. Yeah, but, just because I don't have evidence that an asteroid is not about to hit the Earth doesn't mean it couldn't happen in the next 5 minutes. Yeah, but what kind of astronomical possibilities are you dealing with? That's not proof. That doesn't mean that it's happened or going to happen. Now he doesn't have the evidence. He obviously doesn't have it. So he's saying, yeah, but it could still happen. Okay, it could still happen, but that means you don't have any proof that it did or that they're planning anything.
My God, what is the evidence that you have that suggests that the Russians are even planning this?
Matt,
I mean, I'm not saying that they're not, but you just come out and say this and expect us just to believe it without you showing a shred of evidence that it's actually true. Other than when I ask, or when anyone else asks, what's the information? You said, well, I just gave it to you, which was just you making a statement.
Matt, you said yourself, you've been in this business for quite a long time. You know that when we make information, intelligence information public, we do so.
Look, Matt, you know better than to ask me real questions. Be quiet.
In a way that protects sensitive sources and methods. You also know that we declassify information only when we're confident in that information. If you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government, of the British government, of other governments, and want to,
if you doubt the credibility of the U.S. and U.K. governments, gee, why would anyone ever do that? Why would anyone do that? You know, it's not like the U.S. lied about weapons of mass destruction. Oh, and the U.K. lied about that too, right? The 45 minutes away from attack. It's not like they lied about Saddam working with al-Qaeda. It's not like they lied about Russiagate. It's not like they lied about Gaddafi. It's not like they lied about Syria using chemical weapons to go and bomb Syria. No, they would never do that. Why would they do that? They would never lie. Trust the state.
Find solace in information that the Russians are putting out. That is for you to do.
I'm not asking what the Russian government.
British government of other governments and want to find solace in information that the Russians are putting out. That is for you to do.
I'm not asking what the Russian government is putting out, and what is it supposed to mean?
So basically, this is the same response that Jen Psaki, the White House spokesperson, gave to that report on Air Force One, who was asking, is it true that the ISIS leader, Qurayshi, blew himself up? What did Jen Psaki say? She said, well, if you don't trust us, who do you trust, ISIS? And now the Ned Price is giving the same answer. It's like, well, if you don't trust us, the U.S. government, are you trusting the Russians? No, it's just you are putting out this report, not the Russians. So you have to... you have the burden of proof. The burden of proof is on you. You have to prove that it's true, and you can't. He just says, yeah, but I just told you that it's true. Jesus Christ. I really wish that Matt Lee is pretty good from what I've seen. He's not like the rest of them, but I wish most of the media were like this, that they actually asked real questions and not just taking the statements of the State Department or the White House at face value and reporting it. You know why? You know what that makes you? Because that makes you state media. That makes you a state stenographer. When you are taking statements that are unverifiable and just casually repeating them again, and it's to start fucking wars. It's not like you're lying about someone's favorite kind of cookie or what color they like. They're fucking lying to start wars. They kill people. They literally murder people to make profits. And to, get ratings, and the weapons manufacturers, get profit. They have profits skyrocketing because of this kind of dirty business, right? So it is needed to ask this stuff. And I want to show you something. This is a tweet from Elissa Slotkin, right? So she's a congresswoman from Michigan. She says the administration has declassified intelligence on the Russians' plan to film a fake Ukrainian attack on their forces, complete with a stage set, actors, even fake bodies, all to justify an invasion. Just insane behavior. Slotkin is also former CIA. It's kind of like an oxymoron, one of you told me. So she's a CIA agent, and she's appalled by the idea of a false flag. Dude, the CIA is the best at false flags. That's all they do, right? There was one operation where they had a plan to take a plane and shoot it down, an American plane, a commercial airliner, and then just to start a war and blame it on Cuba, right? This is in the 60s, right? They wanted to shoot down the CIA, the intelligence agency. They wanted to shoot down an American airliner so they could blame Cuba and start a war. And I mean, do I have to go through the whole list? We're never gonna finish the number of false flags. We're never gonna finish, right? The thing with the chemical gas attack in Syria, this is a classic strategy that's used by the CIA to do coups, to start wars, and she's acting like, well, we would never do this. I've never heard such a thing in my life. Just insane behavior, as if she hasn't probably participated in that, or her agency at the very least, right? Gulf of Tonkin is another one. I mean, they never end, right? Again, it's not just... it's obviously not just the CIA, but I'm saying that the Central Intelligence Agency didn't exist in World War II, keep in mind, right? You had the SOE, right? Special Operations Executive, and the British one is, it fails me. But in any case, the point is that, the OSS, Office of Strategic Services, I think. So my point is that these intelligence agencies, the CIA specifically in World War II, they're masterminds at false flags. And acting like she's offended, I mean, this is absurd. Here's an article from the Washington Post saying that, again, the same thing. The U.S. says a new... well, I can't read it, so there you go. I'm not paying for the goddamn Washington Post. The U.S. accuses Russia of planning a false flag attack, right? So it's all over the media. It's all over the news. And you need to understand something, because maybe those of you don't remember... how it was before Iraq, but this is kind of how the media works. You'd have the CIA or the Defense Department. They would say something about Iraq, like Saddam Hussein is working with al-Qaeda, or he went to Niger to get yellow cake, any sort of claim, right? And the media wouldn't question it. They just report it like it's a fact, right? And this is what they're doing again. They don't question it. They just report it like it's a fact. And I mean, what does that make you? That's like, what does that make you, honestly? The problem with doing all of this, the problem with this fear-mongering about, oh my God, Russia is going to invade Ukraine, is that even Ukraine is sick of it. So this is from the BBC. Zelensky is telling the West, don't create panic, okay? So Ukraine's president, Zelensky, has called on the West not to create panic amid the buildup of Russian troops on his country's borders. He told reporters that warnings of an imminent invasion were putting Ukraine's economy at risk. Of course it is. Just from a logical point of view, and this isn't just confined to Ukraine, but when you say a country is about to fall, it's about to be invaded, what do you think that does to investments? What do you think that does to the civilian population? You're going to have all kinds of negative effects on the economy. It's just made up. It's just made up. It seems like the U.S. wants this more than Ukraine, right? I mean, obviously, Ukraine doesn't want anything to do with that. But the fact that Ukraine, I mean, it's not officially a NATO member, but it's receiving weapons from NATO. The British sent weapons. The Americans sent weapons. I mean, you have to understand something, that every time it comes to Russia and China, they're just trying to antagonize them, right? People seem to forget that Afghanistan, when they were occupying Afghanistan for 20 years, that's very, very close to Russia, and it's on the Chinese border and also on the Iranian border. So it's all a question of having more bases and expanding NATO. And that's the whole thing with NATO. There was an agreement with the Russians, and there was a de facto agreement between the Russians and NATO after the end of the Cold War that NATO wouldn't expand anymore. Because remember, NATO was created in 1949. The whole point of it was... The whole point of it was to basically deter Russia, right? So let me just show you the map again. Okay, take a look at this map. I'm just going to pull any random one up. They all have various colors, but take a look at this. So this is NATO in 1949. Then 52, right? They expand in 55, 82, 1990. So we're talking about 1990, right? This is basically supposed to be the limit. And then they just keep going, right? They just keep adding countries, and they want to add Ukraine as well so that they can encircle Russia with more bases. Now, just logically speaking, just ask yourself this question. Can you imagine if Mexico fell under the military control of Russia. When that happened with Cuba, when Cuba, brought Soviet missiles onto its territory after the U.S. tried to overthrow the government after the Bay of Pigs. So with good reason, the Cubans were like, "Yo, we got to defend ourselves. You just tried to invade our country." When that happened, when the Soviets put missiles in Cuba, the United States lost it, right? It's the Cuban Missile Crisis. It's such a drastic, cataclysmic event that you still learn about that in school, right? It's still talked about today, 60 years later. And that was just one thing, but it's totally okay for the United States to encircle Russia and China and Iran with bases, and everyone has to shut up about that. Like, if you're Russia, of course you would be concerned with that. And so this has nothing to do with, Putin invaded Crimea and it's all about Crimea. It's not about Crimea. This is about NATO expansionism, and people need to understand that. And you shouldn't take the word of U.S. Government officials, especially people who work for the CIA, who are talking about potential false flags. And when they're just questioned for 5 minutes by a reporter, can't even produce one iota of convincing evidence that what they're saying is real. They lied about everything that you can possibly think of. Iraq, Syria, Russiagate. It's never ending. And now they want you're supposed to believe them about Ukraine? Come on, man. Come on. Even Ukraine, like I showed you, Zelensky, the president, is saying you need to calm down. You need to calm down. Let's take a look at John Kirby, who's the DOD spokesperson, right, for the Pentagon. So they brought him on Fox to talk about this report because I think he's the one who announced it. Correct me if I'm wrong. So let's take a look at what he's saying.
The Russians are likely to want to fabricate a pretext for an invasion. One option is the Russian government, we think, is planning to stage a fake attack by Ukrainian military or intelligence forces against Russian sovereign territory or against Russian-speaking people to therefore justify their action.
So this is an interesting twist now on the situation with Russia and Ukraine. That's the Pentagon press secretary accusing Moscow of dirty tricks, saying that Russia plans to use this fake video of a Ukrainian attack on Russians to justify an invasion. That sounds like Reichstag, early 1930s Germany. Pentagon Press Secretary John Kirby back with us today. Sir, good morning to you, and thank you for coming back here with Dane and me in our program. When will we see the evidence of that claim?
Well, I'll tell you what, we know there's a lot of curiosity about that. We understand that, and I don't need to tell Dana, who stood at a podium and knows this well, that we don't like talking about intelligence, and if and when we decide to do that, it's pretty carefully measured and pretty carefully calibrated to make sure that we're sending the right message here. We want to make sure that Russia knows we know what they're doing. On the other hand, you got to be careful when you talk about intel that you don't reveal how you know it. And so, look, if there's a way we can provide a little bit more granularity on this, we'll do that. But we got to be very careful.
Just to drill down on that, I'm looking at your soundbite from yesterday. You said the Russians are likely to want to fabricate a pretext.
It's incredible. They talk about everything except actually providing evidence. It's like, first it's about, it's deterrence. Don't you understand how deterrence works, Matt? Don't you understand? We need to scare the Russians or else they'll do what we don't want them to do. Yeah, okay, but what? Can you have proof that they're going to do that? No, but you don't know. You don't understand. And then here with Kirby, it's like, well, when we talk about these things, we want to talk about them without really telling you how we know about them. Dude, well done. I understand operational security. Now, do you actually have any fucking evidence? They keep telling you it's declassified. Where the fuck is it? If it's declassified, where the fuck is it? Dude, the British government, they lied about that goddamn dossier. Remember about the 45 minutes away from attack. The Steele dossier, when it's Russiagate, complete garbage. This time, they can't even be bothered to come up with any toilet paper. They can't even give you the verbal diarrhea.
For an invasion. Do you have physical evidence of that fabrication that you're talking about?
Well, I don't know that there's been a video produced yet, Bill, if that's what you mean, but we certainly have intelligence.
Oh my God. he's not asking you for a VHS cassette tape. He's asking you, do you have evidence that they are thinking of doing this? No. No, of course not. Why would they actually have that?
It indicates that this is something they're thinking about doing. I don't know that they've actually created it yet, but we know that they're thinking about doing it. And that's just one of other things that we...
You know, this is like saying, well, you know, Mr. Smith is going to murder someone, and we don't know that he's actually murdered that person, but we think he's going to do it. Do you have proof? No, but you know, he might do it. There's a chance, but we don't actually have any evidence, if that's what you're asking for. You know, at that rate, you could say anything in the world. You could say anything you like, and just it's true because it might happen, even though, you know, there's no proof of that. It might. Who knows? It might.
They're trying to do to create a pretext for an invasion. They have been long in the...
Christ, who's creating a fucking pretext for invasion? Are you serious? Look how hard. They're like fucking dying to start a war. They're fucking dying to do one, right? They're pulling every goddamn thing they got in the toolkit. Let's send Ukraine weapons, right? Let's go and demonize Russia for moving Russian troops inside Russia. Let's add Ukraine to NATO. Let's go and claim that Russia is bringing blood bags, right? First, they had this explosive bombshell story that Russia is bringing blood bags to the front line. That means they're going to go and start a war now because they're going to need blood for all the wounded. And now it's like, well, we're sure that they're going to make a fake false flag attack. They're going to do a false flag attack in order to have a pretext to invade. What? You're the one who's doing that. This is like double false flag.
The public sphere, calling out Ukraine as the aggressor, calling out the West for arming Ukraine, telling people...
Dude, can you imagine if Russia gave weapons to Mexico? Just imagine what the U.S. reaction would be. You know what the fucking reaction would be. You know, I'm not speculating. I'm giving you a concrete example of Cuba. When the Soviet Union gave Cuba weapons, did the United States not lose its shit? It did. So why doesn't Russia have the right to lose its shit? And Russia's not even doing anything. It's not going to say we're going to nuke you. It's just, you know, it's just saying don't expand NATO. You know, don't try to antagonize us. And it's saying clearly we do not have any intention of invading Ukraine. It's nonsense. They've been very clear about it.
That their national security is threatened when they're the ones with over 100,000 troops on the other side of that border. And it's a group that keeps mounting every day. So look, we just want to make it clear that we know what they're up to. And you know who else knows that this intelligence is accurate? The Russians know. They know it.
And I know one of the things that everyone has been concerned about are deep fake videos at some point, possibly, like on all sorts of fronts, right? And I always worry that I don't want to be the first journalist to ever air one, right? So we are super careful, and that's why the questions today. The other thing I wanted to ask about is Putin's decision to really ramp up things in Ukraine and that pressure. And it seems to me that that comes right after Afghanistan and our withdrawal from there. Is there a connection there that Putin made a calculation, seeing how we left in Afghanistan and his thinking about how the U.S. might respond this time?
If there's a direct correlation between the two things, Dana, I don't think we've seen that. So I'd be careful going that far in terms of his calculations. I mean, this is the man who invaded Ukraine.
Jesus. Do you remember that story with the Russian bounties? I told you when that came out that they're going to say next that there are Iranian bounties. They did. You know, you have Chinese bounties. This is the kind of nonsense that they were saying. And I find it absolutely incredible. I mean, what's funny is that if you listen to American mainstream media, they talk about Vladimir Putin like he's a Superman. Apparently, he has so much fucking time on his hands that he is some genius mastermind that he's able to do all of these intricate things. It's incredible. I had no clue that the U.S. media loved Putin so much. Right? They make him out to be the most intelligent person on earth. He has all the time in the world. He has all the resources to do every single thing. It's incredible, right? They idolize him.
Back in 2014 and invaded Georgia back in 2008. I mean, he's made no secret about the fact that he's bristling at a strong and vibrant NATO, and he bristles at the sovereign independence and the democratically elected government in Ukraine. So I don't know that there's a connection there. But again, we're focused on the situation at hand, which is this potential for a future invasion of Ukraine and trying to find a diplomatic way out of this.
Yeah. the diplomatic way out of it is to send Ukraine weapons, right? You can. This is the American way of doing diplomacy. It's not actually diplomacy. It's basically threatening people with war and coercing them and bullying them into doing what you want. With you know, it's like holding a gun up to someone's head and saying, "I'm being diplomatic. I haven't shot you yet." Wow.
More minutes here. Let's shift to ISIS. It appears to be a significant blow based on special forces in Syria this past week. Yeah. Based on the reporting, we have about 900 U.S. service members on the ground in Syria. Maybe it's more, maybe it's less.
No, you don't have 900 service members in Syria. You have 900 illegal troops. You have 900 colonizers, not servicemen. They're not serving anyone except the weapons manufacturers. You know, it's crazy. Like whatever channel you turn on, whether it's Fox or CNN or MSNBC, they always try to like portray invading other countries as some kind of service. Who the fuck are you serving? Are you high or something? Are you such a fucking cuck that you think you're actually doing something noble? You're just making profits so the CEO at Raytheon can buy a new fucking swimming pool. You fucking dunce. You moron. They don't give a shit about you. There's nothing valorous about that.
Depending on how much information we get from the Pentagon. Are we going back into eastern Syria and western Iraq to take down another caliphate soon?
If you mean by going back in, you mean in a larger footprint than we have right now. And Bill, you're right, the number is about 900. No, I don't think that's going to happen, but we are still focused with those less than 1,000 troops in Syria, working with the Syrian Democratic Forces to continue to go after ISIS. That has been a continuing mission, and it needs to be continuing because, as we've seen...
Dude, the mission is stealing oil. I don't need to tell you this. Both Trump and Biden have been stealing Syria's oil with the Kurdish forces. They call them the SDF, right? So in east and northeastern Syria and Hasaka and Deir ez-Zor, they've been occupying the oil fields. They're just stealing fucking oil. That's not fighting ISIS. Fighting ISIS is the pretext. I'm going to keep saying this until the end of time. ISIS wouldn't exist if the United States and the coalition of the willing hadn't invaded Iraq. That is a direct result of the U.S. invasion. So they create the problem and then they have the solution, which is just another pretext to keep the country occupied.
They are trying to reconstitute. They're trying to grow their strength back again. We have indications that they would love nothing more than to attack Western targets, including our homeland. So we're going to stay focused on this.
Admiral, yesterday there was a State Department briefing where the ISIS raid was brought up, and the AP reporter Matt Lee, who's been there for many different presidents, and he's always got some tough questions. He asked the spokesman, Ned Price, about all of this and the intelligence. Watch here.
It is intelligence information that we have declassified.
Well, where is it? Where's the declassified information?
I just delivered it.
No, you made a series of allegations and statements.
Would you like us to print out the topper? Because you will see a transcript of this briefing that you can print out for yourself.
That's not evidence, Ned. That's you saying it. That's not evidence. I'm sorry. We
declassify information only when we're confident in that information. Ned, if you doubt the credibility of the U.S. government,
Matt, if you doubt the state one more time.
The British government.
And it went on from there. Why so defensive?
So first of all, I know both men very well. Ned's a good friend, and I stood at that podium across from Matt Lee. They're both gentlemen, and they're both dogged in their jobs, and I have great respect for both of them. But look, as I said earlier when we were talking, I mean, deciding to talk about intelligence matters is a tricky business. I mean, you in some cases, like in this, we think it's valuable for people to know and for the Russians to know that we know what they're up to. On the other hand, you don't want to reveal how you know it. So, look, if there's a way to get more context out there about this, I think we'll try to do that. Can't promise it, but it's a tricky balance we're trying to strike. We felt that there was more value in making it clear to the Russians and the world, quite frankly, that we knew what they were up to, the dirty tricks that they were capable of, rather than just declassifying what is, in fact, highly sensitive intelligence.
I have 30 seconds left. A quick question,
yes, sir.
Important question.
Yes, sir.
Marco Rubio says this is the most serious threat since 1945 and talks about an invasion as a near certainty, I should say. The Ukrainians aren't talking that way. Neither are European leaders. So why the disconnect?
Well, I can't speak for Ukrainian leaders, Bill. I mean, they certainly have
but
their
these
own.
U.S. senators, they were briefed on Ukraine yesterday. So what were they told?
Well, it was a classified briefing, but I would agree with Senator Rubio's take. This is potentially a very significant conflict that we could be looking at on the European continent. I don't think the senator was exaggerating in the slightest. And we've been nothing but transparent, not only with people on the Hill, but of course, the Ukrainians and other allies.
Yeah, you know, what's happening in Ukraine is the biggest threat since the Nazis in 1945, which is why the United States government is funding and helping neo-Nazis in Ukraine. That makes total sense, right? Well done. Every time they want to hype people up for war, you know, they got to bring in these images of World War II, like, you know, Uncle Sam saving the day and American military might, and, you know, get the patriotism going, the eagle soaring overhead. That's rubbish. This is nothing to do. It's not even close to 1945. What a way to make a mockery out of World War II, honestly. And, you know, he can't answer the question, right? Every time he's asked about the evidence for it, he doesn't have it. And even at the end, the presenter is asking Kirby, why the disconnect? Because even the Ukrainians are saying that there's no danger. And then all of a sudden he's like, well, I can't speak for the Ukrainians, but you are. You speak literally every day for the Ukrainians, or you claim to speak on their behalf. You say that they're in danger and you have to go protect them and you have to send them weapons. And every single day, every moment, you're speaking on behalf of the Ukrainians. And now all of a sudden, oh, I can't speak on their behalf. You know, when it's something that it doesn't fit the narrative. It's like, oh, I don't know. It was classified. I don't speak for them. Oh man, they're so transparent. I don't know, man. I really feel I hope people are waking up to this, because this pro-war nonsense is so horrible. I mean, these questions here are half decent. I wish they would have pressed him a bit more the way Matt pressed Ned Price. But still, it's again kind of like, okay, we'll ask the question and then whatever answer you give, whatever. I don't know, man. I'm going to be very honest with you. If Russia wanted to hurt, you know, Europe and NATO, they could just turn off the gas, right? Russia, correct me if I'm wrong, is the biggest supplier of gas to Europe. They have many ways of doing, exerting influence or exercising their leverage without resorting to war. I find this absolutely hilarious that, you know, they think Russia is so weak that it's basically indecisive. It just sits there on the border, like, okay, should we invade today? Should we invade tomorrow? Maybe they would have done something if they're going to do it. They're not waiting for you to. Logically, if Russia was actually going to do something in Ukraine, why would it wait for the Ukrainians to receive weapons from the British and the Americans so they could be more powerful? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the United States, they have a track record of lying about these things to start wars. Don't believe them for 1 second. They don't have any good intentions. The defense secretary was working at Raytheon, a weapons manufacturer. These people, all of them, they're former intelligence agency, or they have ties to the corporate America. They're not in this for public service. They're not in this for the truth. They're in this to make money and to further American hegemony. So don't buy it. Don't buy it for a second, honestly. Even Ukraine is saying you need to cool it, where we don't feel like we're being threatened with invasion, then, like, what else do I need to say? Speaks for itself. So, I mean, the war propaganda is just, Christ, it's off the charts. They never stop, man. They never stop. Every single day they have some reason to kill someone, to bomb someone. It never ends. It never ends. It's disgusting. It never ends. Lukazi, thank you so much for the donation. Lukazi says, thank you for everything you're doing, Richard. You're the only journalist I can trust. Kil ihtiram elak. So all the respect to you. Thank you so much. Islamu. Thank you very much, Lukazi. And we got another one over here from 155 says, Ya Haj Richard, keep up the great work. Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it, guys. Just give me a second. I'm trying to refresh on Rockfin to see if there's anything there, any donations you guys sent, so I can I make sure I don't miss it. But don't go anywhere. We still got more things to cover, right? If you guys have any questions, shoot. I'll try and answer them the best I can. We got something from Mona. Mona, I saw her in the chat. I hope she's still here. Mona sent something on PayPal. It's loading. Give me a second. Mona says, Richie, the GOAT, the MVP, big dick. I'm sorry. I know you got to be professional now. We miss you. Hope you're well. We need to catch up soon. XOXO, Gossip Girl. No, but seriously, Mona, thank you so much. That really made me laugh, and I'm so happy to hear from you. It has been a long time. We do need to catch up. Let me know what's happening, and every time I see you tune in, I'm always happy. So I hope you're still here, and thank you so much, Mona. You made my day. So we got Noah, who's joined on Patreon, and we got it's Hilden. I'm not sure if I'm reading that correctly, but if Hilden. In any case, thank you guys very much. Put your hands together for our new members on Patreon. I'm going to play a crab dance for them, as we always do, to celebrate people who support the show on a monthly basis. Thank you so much.
Clap for that, you stupid bastard. And Corn Pop was a bad dude. And he ran a bunch of bad boys.
Listen, fuckhead, you have fucking crossed the line, claiming I'm the enemy. You got that, you goddamn son of a bitch?
I don't give a fuck what you think, bitch.
Good morning. Sunday morning.
Cut that bitch out.
Thank you for Iron Dome, which is a technical marvel.
والله انتوا كلاب بصراحة يعني. ماشي نشتغل عادي.
We lied, we cheated, we stole.
Why you texting? Why? You're getting nervous, man. Calm down. It's okay. Okay.
Suck my dick and choke on it. I yield my time. Fuck you.
All right, everybody. Almost lost you there for a second. Again, thank you so much to everyone who's supporting the show. If you want to support the show, you can donate on Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, whatever you like. Even if you got questions or comments, shoot, and I'll read them. You can scan those codes with your phone, and if you want to support monthly on Patreon, you can do that too for as little as $1 a month, whatever you like. You can put in any amount you like, and I'm very grateful. And I'll play a crab dance as well. Every time someone joins, we play a crab dance. So thank you very much. And we got more segments to cover. Give me a second, and I'm going to pull this up for you. So just a second. We also got a tip here from Faye. Says the United States is the only misbehaved spoiled child going around ruining shit for everyone. No other country would do this in 2022. There is more than enough resources for everyone. # greed. I absolutely agree. There's no reason to do this. And unfortunately, this is what happens when corporations are running governments, right? Fascism, death, destruction. So let me move on to the next segment. Okay, this is an interesting one. I saw a picture posted on social media. This was Danny Haifong who posted it. It was a funeral in New York City for a policeman who was shot, who was fatally shot. Here's the picture, right? I don't know if you can quite see the size of that, but this is a sea of policemen. All of this section here, this is all police. I mean, I honestly cannot. I don't even know how many that is. It's just thousands and thousands, right? It's incredible. It's quite a sight. And Danny said, "I'm going to tell my kids this is what fascism looks like." And Susan Sarandon actually retweeted this, and she said something along the lines of, if all of these cops are on duty, then obviously we don't need all of them. I'm paraphrasing, but she said something along those lines. And, you know, Danny and Susan, they both got a lot of heat for that. I mean, I'm not going to read to you the comments in his DMs, but really just a bunch of nasty stuff. You know, stuff like this. This is what they were sending to Danny. And you know what happened? Susan Sarandon actually, I couldn't find the tweet anymore. I don't know if she took it down, but look what happened in the press. So this is from NBC News, which, as you know, are huge fans of Susan Sarandon. Susan Sarandon faces backlash for retweeting posts comparing police funeral to fascism, right? And so they also talked about Danny, right? It said Susan Sarandon is facing criticism after she shared a tweet comparing the funeral of a slain NYC police officer to fascism. Following the funeral of Officer Jason Rivera, who was shot and killed responding to a call in Harlem last month, Danny Haifung shared a photo of thousands of police officers lining Fifth Avenue outside St. Patrick's Cathedral, where the service for Rivera, who's 22, was held. And they quote Danny, right? And then they say, wrote Haifung, who identifies himself as an independent journalist. He doesn't identify himself as a journalist. He is a journalist. He is an independent journalist, and a very good one at that. You should support his work on Patreon. And underneath it, right underneath that, they put a definition of what fascism is, like as if people reading it are too stupid to figure it out for themselves. And then basically, I don't know what the point of this is, except to, echo the comments that they received. But I just want to say something to you, because that picture of the police, let's take a look at it again, right? That's a lot of police. That is a lot of police. And I want to say something to you. If this photograph had been taken in North Korea, in Syria, in China, in Iran, what do you think people would say? What do you think Americans specifically would say? I think they would say the same thing as Danny did, because they've been conditioned to believe that, well, fascism doesn't exist in America. There's no authoritarianism in America. All of these axis of evil countries, yeah, they have it, right? So they would just immediately, call those countries whatever smear, countries they've never visited, the language they don't speak, they have no connection or clue about the culture. They've just been conditioned and programmed to hate certain countries by the lackeys on corporate media who lie to start wars, who lie to justify sanctions, whose business it is to advertise and promote murder. And so people, a lot of Americans, I'm not saying all, but a lot of people in America and Europe would have no problem seeing a photo of this in Venezuela and calling Venezuela a police state or a fascist state or an authoritarian state. If a Syrian coughs, they're always like, Assadist. If you're Cuban, if you're from North Korea, all of the official enemies of the United States, everyone is automatically brainwashed, a fascist, they're authoritarian. That's how they view the rest of the world. But apparently they think that, there's no such thing as fascism in America. There's no such thing as authoritarianism. All of the shit that they call other countries apparently doesn't exist in the United States. And that's not to say that the United States, they're not. I'm not saying everyone in the United States would say that, but a lot of people would. I think a lot of the people who are complaining about this tweet wouldn't hesitate to say the same thing about Cuba or Russia or North Korea, even though they have no connection to that country. They have no clue about it. So I just wanted to point out the hypocrisy, because people are getting so upset about Danny's tweet or Susan Sarandon's tweet, but they wouldn't hesitate to say the same thing about other countries, right? And I mean, just bear with me a second. That is a lot of police. And people have said that these are off-duty cops. So that's why it's a lot of them. Okay. off-duty or not off-duty. I'm just trying to understand this from a budget point of view. Like, how do you, like, why would you get more than what you need? Whatever it is, policemen, computers, cars, you know, don't you think that's a lot? Because if you say, okay, well, we need X amount of police to protect New York City, and then you get, you know, X to the power of 20, that's way more than you need. So are they needed or not? It's just a budget question. It's nothing to do with, you know, fuck the police or something. It's just a legitimate budget question. I'm just trying to understand the logic in it. And here, take a look at this. This is how much the United States spends on police. Take a look at this, right? So this is compared to the military budget, okay? So where U.S. police spending ranks among worldwide military expenditures, the United States, state and local governments collectively spend more on policing than most countries do on their militaries. So the United States spends $118 billion on police. This is from 2019, right? India's military is $71 billion. That's almost double of what India spends on its military. Do you really need that? Again, it's not just New York City, it's just combined. I mean, there are bigger countries who don't spend that much. Russia is certainly bigger than the United States, and it spends half of what the United States spends on police on its military. On its military, which is arguably, in terms of national defense, it's the army, right? Because that's a separate expenditure. And how do you rationalize that? I know how to rationalize it in one way. I'll tell you why they spend so much money, because it's a racket. It's a racket. When you have a militarized police force, you're selling them APCs, you know, armored personnel carriers, which are used in war zones. You're selling them machine guns. You're selling them all sorts of tactical equipment that is reserved usually for a combat zone, that is reserved usually for military applications. You're basically just doubling the profits of the arms manufacturers and the weapons manufacturers, even down to the uniforms, the companies that make the uniforms. You know, the arms dealers have a very, very diversified portfolio, make no mistake. This is one of the reasons why you have a militarized police force in the US, because the money is not about protecting Americans. It's not about having a police force that protects and serves. It's about having a police force that makes profits for the same companies that make weapons, right? So they're selling now, not, you know, the companies that make armored personnel carriers are not just going to be selling now to the US military. They're also going to be selling to state and local police forces. Do you understand? And they give these police forces a budget, a certain budget in the year, right? It varies from state to state, from municipality to municipality. And if they don't spend it, the budget gets cut. So they're like basically being told to spend all this money on stuff they usually don't even need, right? That's one of the reasons they have a militarized police force, and why they look like you know, they're in a combat zone, because that's the whole idea. And so, again, I don't know what the point is of this NBC article. They're basically like smearing Susan Sarandon and Danny like he identifies as a journalist. No, he is regarded as a journalist because he fucking is. He's certainly a bigger journalist than you nobodies, right? With your bullshit smears, you can't even report on anything of value. So, you know, it's just another corporate outlet. So anyway, just a shocking picture, really. It's absolutely incredible. I don't think most Americans would say nice comments about that if it were from another country. Just wanted to point out the hypocrisy for you. I'm trying to see if Mona's still here. I don't think so. I'm not sure anymore. But in any case, thank you, Paul, for the donation on PayPal. And we also got one from Gina. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. There's no comment, but I appreciate it nonetheless. I want to talk about something else with you guys, because this is something that kind of, you know, it angered me. I want to just pull up some notes here. Okay. So there are certain people, I'm not going to say their names, it's not about who said it, but a lot of people say this, certain, figures on social media and government officials. A lot of people think that, sanctions are not brutal. They think that if you sanction a country, that's some sort of humane way to coerce that country as opposed to bombing it. Which again, it's just look at this. They're basically admitting that the objective is to bully a country into obeying, Western and United States foreign policy objectives. So they're basically saying like, yeah, it's good that the United States bullies other countries and coerces them and intimidates them, but let's just starve the people to death instead of bombing them, right? And this idea that sanctions are less brutal is such an ignorant, really like a fucking ignorant thing to say. I spoke to 2 of my cousins today, right? Do you know what they told me? They told me the situation in Syria right now under sanctions is so fucking bad, they would rather live under the war again. They would rather have bombs raining down on their homes than live under sanctions. 2 of my cousins told me that today, right? Roni, you guys know Roni. So he's been out of Syria now for a year or 2, and then my other cousin just left 3 months ago. Finally got out. Again, let me say that to you. My cousins from Syria told me they would rather live under the war again than live under sanctions. That is how fucking shit everything is. And I want to tell you something. My cousin, he told me that the electricity now is on for 1 hour and then it cuts off 6 hours. Then it comes back 1 hour, cuts off 6 hours. Can you imagine living like that? 3-4 hours of electricity a day? He told me when in spring and autumn, when the electricity is gone for 3 hours and then on for 3 hours, off 3 hours, on 3 hours, that people are happy because it's not as bad as now or in the summer. And you can't get any mazut, you can't get any fuel to put in the sobia, the heater. So you can't even heat yourself during winter now. He told me my grandmother's house, if we wanted to heat ourselves right now, you'd get maybe 50 liters that will last you barely 2 weeks. So can you imagine in winter you only have 2 weeks of heating? And good luck finding fuel. You need money to buy it because it's so expensive. And that's if you find it. So you could still have money for, by some miracle, and you won't even be necessarily find the fuel to buy. And I think it was just this week they cut the subsidies for fuel, the Syrian government. They can't subsidize it anymore, so the price is doubled. You can't get any bread. You have to wait hours in line, and then you give you 1 bag of bread. I remember I used to go with my cousins or with my mother or with my family, and we go to the bakery and we get bags of bread. Bags, like 5 bags filled like this. There's no such thing as a bread line. I've never heard of a bread line in Syria. That's not a thing. They talk about socialist countries having bread lines. The only bread lines in Syria were created by the United States sanctions. That's a fucking fact. That's a fucking fact. So this idea that sanctions are less brutal is some of the most ignorant, goddamn nonsense I've ever heard in my life. You know who say these kinds of things? The people who say these things have probably never even set outside their own country. They've never even been outside the United States. That's how fucking pig shit ignorant these motherfuckers are. They don't even know where Syria is on a fucking map. They have no clue what's happening in Venezuela. They have literally no idea. They're not the ones who are living under sanctions. They don't have any family living under sanctions. They don't have any friends living under sanctions. They're so fucking pig shit ignorant. Right? They just sit in their armchairs talking about foreign policy, and they can't even place Syria on a fucking map. That's how dumb they are. And people buy this shit. Really, just the most ignorant dunces imaginable, pretending they're authorities on foreign policy. You don't even understand your own fucking country, you dunce. let alone Syria and Venezuela and everything else. They're so brainwashed. They've grown up their entire lives in this American bubble or this Western European bubble, brainwashed, and all they've been fed, everything they know about other countries comes from curated corporate Western media. They've never been to these places. They don't speak the language. They have no clue about the culture. They don't know anyone there, and they think that they understand sanctions and it's less brutal. Really? How about I cut your water off and your heating and take away your food for a couple of months and see how much you fucking like it, you prick? Yeah? If you think sanctions are not so bad, let's do it. You don't think that kills people? If I take away your food and your water, you're not going to die? If I take away your medicine, if you need medicine, you have a life-threatening condition, and I take away the medical equipment, that's not going to kill you? You fucking smartass? These people are so disgusting. They're so arrogant, and they think that they understand everything, and like they're rational, and they are, you know, they're responsible because they're not savage. They don't want to bomb people. They just want to starve people to death, right? Again, man, I'm telling you, my cousin said they would rather have the mortars, the mortars, you know, like the shells raining down on them, qazaif. They would rather have the mortars raining down on them and the war back in Damascus than live under sanctions. And that's not just me. Go ask any Syrian who's living now in Damascus or in the areas that have been taken back that are under control, what it's like. And interestingly enough, guess who's not under sanctions in Syria? The SDF, who are stealing the oil with the Americans, and the terrorists, Al-Qaeda. There's no sanctions in Idlib, where you have all these tens of thousands of jihadist fighters. This makes me really angry, you know? Again, they're basically just... I don't care if it's even non-lethal. Like, let's say you were taking away... something that is not life-threatening. Like, let's say it's not food necessarily, or it's not medical parts. Like, the whole premise, the whole idea that you think it's okay as a country to bully other countries into coercion, that's not diplomacy. That just makes you a prick. And you're no better than someone who drops bombs. You're no better. Let me play you again this clip here from the former U.S. Secretary of State, Madeleine Albright. Okay? And you might recall that in the 1990s, that Iraq, they starved Iraq. Okay? And do you know how many people died? Let me show you. Take a look.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Oh, you think the price is worth it? They killed 500,000 children in Iraq with sanctions. 500,000 children. And they say the price is worth it. Yeah, because you're not the one paying it. You're not the one paying the price. You impose this price on other people. You extinguish their lives, and then you say, I think the price is worth it. What do you mean worth it? What is it your business to go and do that? How is that you murder hundreds of thousands of people and you think that's worth it? Worth what? What is that worth? How are you any better than Saddam Hussein? How the fuck are you any better than these so-called dictators that you're going in and trying to topple? You are worse than them. You are worse than them by leagues. And so this is the situation, right? And they're not going to tell you this on the news, right? Because they want you to believe that sanctions are humane. They're not humane. They're evil. And they're illegal under international law. Unilateral sanctions imposed by the United States are illegal. They have no legal right to do that. But even when this was done to Iraq, and it was supposedly legal under the UN, that doesn't make it right. That doesn't make it right. It's just as lethal. If it wasn't lethal, why would they use it? They know it makes the people suffer. It's never the leadership. When you sanction Syria, Bashar al-Assad or his family or the ministers, they're not suffering. They still have all their resources, and their standard of living does not change. You know whose standard of living changes? Everyone who's not Bashar al-Assad, everyone who is not in the government. They're the ones who are getting screwed. What exactly are you trying to accomplish? They want them to rise up and topple the government. But that's not going to happen. They know it's not going to happen, because if it didn't happen in 10 years, it's not going to happen, right? How many decades have they've been trying to sanction Cuba? 60 years. Did it accomplish anything? No, nothing. They're sanctioning Venezuela, Iran. Doesn't accomplish nothing. That's not how it works. They know that it screws the people and it makes them suffer. And that's why they do it. And it's not less brutal than bombs. I will not tolerate these pick shit, ignorant motherfuckers sitting in their armchairs talking about sanctions that they don't have to suffer. These prices that they don't have to pay. Your opinion is fucking worthless, you ignorant prick. I'm really angry about this because they have no clue what they're talking about. They think it's a game. You know, they think, oh yeah, sanction is when we stop, Maduro from being able to access his bank account. No, that's not what it means. That's not what it means. You're stopping people in Venezuela from eating. I spoke to the UN Special Rapporteur on sanctions, right? And she told me what she witnessed in Venezuela, man. The children, they don't even have pencils to write with in school because of the sanctions. Pencils, right? And then they give you this nonsense about, oh no, but U.S. sanctions have exemptions for humanitarian purposes. No, they don't. That's just on paper. It doesn't exist in reality. That doesn't do anything because the NGOs cannot keep up with what the traders supply. An NGO cannot substitute for the entire imports of the country, especially in countries like, Lebanon or Yemen, where 90% of the food is imported. The exemptions are, they exist on paper, but they're too difficult to actually navigate. Most people steer clear of it. It's not a solution. It's just some crap they put on there to make themselves feel good. So, this thing like, oh yeah, sanctions are less brutal. That's the feel-good version of imperialism, right? It's these people who think that they are somehow not savages and, they're more benevolent in their manner, and that sanctioning people is okay because, it's not a bomb that's falling on them. And that way we can sleep at night as we continue imperialism by bullying other countries, starving them off. Sanctions are siege warfare, period. I'm going to read your comments, guys. Ellen says, keep up the great work. You're one of the most trusted voices. Thank you very much, Ellen. And you're very kind. Sorry, I just reloaded again. Thank you so much. And you're very kind. I really appreciate the donation. Thank you. Theo says the UN is blocked by the veto powers of the 5 empires. I mean, the UN is useless. It's just the fact that you have permanent seats on the UN Security Council makes it useless, because if the whole idea is that we're going to congregate as nations into one organization and it's equal and fair and there's representation for everyone, that's not true if you give 5 countries power over everyone else. It undermines the entire purpose. So, it's absurd. It's absurd. I don't care if Syria would have veto power. It's wrong, right? I'm a British citizen and the UK has veto power. I don't want it. We shouldn't have that. That's not a good thing. Just JC says the UN is performative. Yeah, it absolutely is. Both my parents worked in the UN. That's the main lesson that they taught me. It's useless. I mean, I'm not saying they don't do some good things. They do some good things. But on the whole, when it comes to stopping wars, when it comes to getting some justice, it's useless. It's not accomplishing what it set out to do. Holly says, free Alex Saab. So forgive me, I don't remember if I actually did a segment on him, but I think I talked about him, and he's basically a Venezuelan diplomat. Let me explain who he is. So Alex Saab, he's a Venezuelan diplomat, and the United States, I mean, this is incredible. Like, I've never heard of this. They issued a warrant, and he was arrested in Cape Verde, and then they extradited him to the U.S. A diplomat. You can't do that to a diplomat. I mean, diplomats have immunity, right? You can arrest a diplomat if they have like a machine gun and they're mowing down people. Yeah, like in extreme cases. But you can't go and arrest a diplomat because he's dealing with Iran. Like, that's what they're charging him with, right? Because Iran is under sanctions, Venezuela is under sanctions, and he's just trying to coordinate trade between them. He's trying to mitigate the effect of sanctions, right? And that's what they did. They basically broke the Vienna Convention, which again gives diplomats immunity. It sets out the rules for how a host country must protect diplomats and so on. And they extradited him. I mean, it's unbelievable. I've never heard of such a thing. Can you imagine if someone did that to an American diplomat? Basically kidnapping a diplomat. They would lose it. They would lose it. But, you know, they behave like gangsters. They behave like thugs. It's absolutely mind-boggling. And this is barely covered by the news, right? You won't hear about this on the news. I bet you ask most people, like, they won't even know who he is. But they should know who he is, because this is a very serious story. It's a very serious breach of international law. Again, the Vienna Convention is signed by God knows how many countries. It sets out the framework, the legal framework for how to treat diplomats. It's not about treating them. It's not about, like, you know, making them feel good. It's about protecting them. That's the whole point. Because when you're a host country and you have an embassy in your country, you have a responsibility to protect that embassy. And in this case, I mean, in Cape Verde, there's nothing to do with the U.S., right? They just managed to catch him while he was there, and he was kept for a while, and then they shipped him off to the U.S. I mean, it's absolutely obscene, honestly. I'm just scrolling up to read your comments, guys. RSFO says, when will Syria kick out these occupiers? I don't think that's a decision just for Syria. I think, I mean, it should be, obviously, but my point is the reality on the ground is that you have Russia. The thing is, the war in Syria now is kind of in a stalemate in terms of land gains, because you have Idlib, which is still, like I said, under control of these terrorists in Turkey, and then the oil fields and northeastern Syria under the U.S. occupation and the Kurdish forces, and the rest of the country, except the Golan Heights, which is under Israeli control, is under the Syrian Arab army's control. And right now, the final battle, in my opinion, again, I could be wrong, you never know what happens, but I think the final battle is going to be Idlib. Because I think with the Kurds, the Syrian Democratic Forces, as they call themselves, that's not the Syrian army, it's just a group of militias. You know, I think what will happen with the Kurdish-led groups is they will sign a sort of armistice with the Syrian government, which is, again, you know, when Trump pulled out of northern Syria, that's what they did. They went and signed a protection deal with the Syrian government to protect them from Turkey, because Turkey was killing Kurds, right? So, again, it kind of shows you how ridiculous this is, like that the Syrian army or the Syrian government is against Kurds. Why would they protect them then? Just, you know, figure that one out. In any case, I think what will end up happening is they'll sign a deal or something, an armistice of sorts, and then when it comes to Idlib, that's going to be a very big battle. That's going to be a very big battle. You know, it's crazy because I was speaking to my cousin earlier, and like I told you guys, he lives a few meters, like literally a few meters from this district in Damascus called Jobar, which is where you had all these jihadist groups. They had dug tunnels. They had they basically besieged this place for 8 years. I don't even remember how long. It was a very long time. 7 years, 6 years, a very, very long time. And this was until 2018, right? And, you know, I was asking him again about the battle when they liberated it, because the Syrian army went in and took it back, and then they kept going into the suburbs in Damascus. They went outside from Jobar into Ghouta and then Douma. And that's when you had this gas attack, right? This bullshit gas attack, which didn't happen. It's a false flag because they got their asses handed to them, right? That's always what happens. As soon as the rebels, let's call them what they are, the Saudi and Qatari-backed terrorists, as soon as they lost land, they would, you know, do a fake, they would do a false flag operation and get the Americans to bomb Syria. So that's what that was. But I remember him telling me about it. Like, he told me that he could, like, at night when there was no traffic, you know, there were less cars. Man, he told me you could literally hear these jihadists talking and yelling like a few blocks down. I mean, that would scare anyone shitless, honestly. And this is so fucked up. I want to tell you something. Like, I was talking to my other cousin, Ronnie, and he was telling me how every neighborhood in Damascus, especially in this area, right, which was very close to where all these jihadist groups were, Faylaq al-Rahman, Jaish al-Islam, which again are like Saudi-backed and so on. He told me, like, where you lived in Damascus, there were various pros and cons. If you lived in next to Jobar, the advantage was that the mortars wouldn't hit you because they were going, you know, the arc, the trajectory was further away from where you're living. But you could be hit by bullets. And so if you lived where Ronnie's house was, the advantage is that you wouldn't get hit by bullets, but the con was that you would get hit by mortars. I mean, what kind of a fucking choice is that, you know? What kind of a choice is that? That's so demented and sick, you know? It's so horrible. And then, of course, you had all these car bombs going off. There was a huge car bomb that went off in front of Ronnie's house. But again, I don't remember. I mean, I've talked about this with him a million times. I don't know if we've talked about it here, but I'll bring him on if he wants to tell you. And he has a bunch of files. He has a bunch of vlogs that he filmed during the war. And that's priceless, because there's not a lot of that. So we need to put those out bit by bit, you know. That's a big project we have to do. Yeah. In any case, I don't know, man. That's really upsetting. I mean, I love talking to my cousins, but it's really upsetting, all this shit they're telling me, you know. With the sanctions, with the war, it's just like they destroyed the country, you know. So is the stream working on Rockfin? I hope it's okay now. Tonks and Dante sent a donation on Super Chat. I sent a Super Chat on YouTube. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And there's Faye who sent a heart. Thank you for the heart, Faye. You guys are very kind. I'm going to go through your comments to read anything else. Standing Alone says, would Syria consider a protection pact with China? I don't know much about China's relations with the Middle East. China doesn't seem to play the U.S. game. Well, I don't know about a protection pact. I think that for now, China is focusing on non-military endeavors. So Syria signed the Belt and Road. They signed a memorandum of understanding, which is basically Syria going ahead with integrating itself into the Belt and Road Initiative. And I did a separate video on that. But my point here, just to answer your question, is that I was talking about this with my cousin earlier. Like, it's not enough. You know, countries that enter the Belt and Road Initiative, like they're not at war, and it's, you know, it's good for them. But with Syria, it's not going to be enough for Syria. Do you know what I mean? Syria needs far more reconstruction than that, far more. And so when it comes to defense, I don't know. I think Russia for the moment, and Iran and Hezbollah, it's enough, right? It turned the tide of the war. As soon as they entered the war, everything I don't think the Americans expected that. I don't think they expected Russia to go in. They probably thought that it's not important enough because Russia has a naval base in Syria. Remember, Russia only has like 20 military bases around the world. It's not like the US, but it had one in Syria, and that's not the reason it entered the war. It's too easy and naive to think that. But because, especially when the base was like barely being used. This is actually what's funny because, you know, if you listen to these neocons, they're angry because Russia and Iran have like stronger influence in Syria, as if Syria is just like a proxy state for them. That's not true. But if you're going to talk about Russia being in Syria, well, Russia, after entering the war to fight these US-backed and Saudi-backed terrorists, actually renovated the base. So that naval base, which is in Tartus, is actually more modern now than it used to be. So, I mean, if you were, like, if the only reason you're concerned about Russia having more control in Syria, whatever that means, and that's your only reason to oppose the war, well, that was stupid. But I would hope that people can see that that's not the reason Russia entered the war, and especially that the war shouldn't be happening in the first place. Not just because it's, you know, it's like those people who say, well, the coup in 1953 in Iran was bad because it led to the Islamic Republic. Well, no, the coup was bad because it's an act of war. It's foreign intervention. That's why it's bad, not because you don't like the Islamic Republic. Like, this is the kind of logic, you know, that they have. It's ridiculous. Thank you, Cortez. I appreciate it very much. Thank you for your comment. I see a comment from Michael. I don't know what in response to what this was. It says, "Yeah, Richard, but USA." That could have been for any of the segments I just did, right? Oh man. Again, I'm just reading your comments, so give me a moment. I'm trying to figure out from which segment those were, so I have some context. You guys are saying, go Susan, you rock. Where says, which people following Susan Sarandon were unaware of her views, though? I don't know. I have no clue. I think she's pretty consistent and she's pretty dope. Susan is the best, honestly. And she's great. Susan Sarandon is the best. The fact that they try to blame her for 2016, which is one of the most absurd things I've ever heard, it just shows you that she's good. You know, if the Hillary gang is coming for you, you know you did something right. Honestly, if Hillary Clinton and those these nasty liberals are trying to demonize you. So, Christopher says China will rebuild Syrian infrastructure through the Belt and Road. I really hope they will. I'm sure it will play some part, but my point was that just to illustrate the extent of the damage, just to give people an idea how bad it is. And it's not just me saying that, it's my cousins and my family. They're telling me, like, that's not going to be enough. You know, it's like there's so much stuff that's been ruined. If you look at Jobar, which we were just talking about, for example, that looks like Berlin in 1945. And it still looks like that, even though it was liberated 4 years ago. Right? So, like, there's so much stuff that needs to be rebuilt. And the thing is, like, that's the least of, like, that's not even the worst problem, because you can rebuild buildings, right? You can rebuild cities, but the people who died, how do you bring them back, you know? Pookie says, Salam, damn, I caught the end part of the stream again. Please tell me there's one more segment. Well, we might do an impromptu one if you guys remind me of something. But I've done most of them. But don't fret. I'm still answering questions and reading comments. So go ahead if you want to ask anything. Standing Alone says some very serious changes need to happen regarding national security. It's often used as an excuse and to keep secrets. It's bullshit 99% of the time. I mean, this is the classic trick that any authoritarian government uses, right? We can't tell you, but the threat is real. And it's like that, right? Russiagate, Iraq, and many other conflicts, many other interventions. Again, the word intervention is kind of lame. It's not intervening, it's imperialism. It's more than intervening. But a lot of these things are justified with, it's top secret, we can't tell you, it's national security. It's not. There's nothing to do with that. When you look at, for example, the reports that the U.S. was coming out with before invading Iraq, Dick Cheney was pressuring the CIA to lie about this and to create these fake reports, which again, it sounds a bit like a weird paradox because the CIA doesn't need an invitation to lie, but it's just one example of how evidence is cooked, right? And then once again, they make it out to be it's national security. It's not national security. It's the securing the profits of the corporations. That's what it is. Eric says, is it possible Iraqi pressure against the U.S. military access in Iraq could affect it in Syria? There are no longer performing certain operations already. Yeah, so this is basically what you're talking about is the United States recently changed the status of its troops in Iraq from, combat troops to non-combat troops. I mean, you can call it whatever you like. It's still an occupation. Just because the U.S. left after invading Iraq in 2003 and then came back all of a sudden to fight ISIS doesn't mean it's not an occupation. Why do you think that the Hashd al-Sha'bi exists, the popular mobilization units? Yeah, in one part because they're actually fighting ISIS. It's not an excuse. And they're also against the U.S. occupation. So you can call it whatever you like. It's still an occupation. And you can change the label of the troops. It's still an occupation. You're still angering people because Iraqis don't want you on their land. Would you like Iraqis on American soil? Would you like Iraqi soldiers coming and building a base in Washington, D.C., the size of Vatican City? Pretty sure they wouldn't like it, right? So why do you do that to others? That's not okay. And you can call it whatever you like. It doesn't change the reality on the ground. So whether that would affect the situation in Syria, well, we have to understand something. When we talk about the resistance in Iraq is very much intertwined with the resistance in Syria. The Hashd al-Sha'bi, the popular mobilization units, they have the blessing of the Syrian government to operate in Syria, right? They're legally operating in Syria as opposed to the Americans who are illegally inside Syria. And when it comes to Iraq integrated the PMU into the armed forces. So that's really interesting because these popular mobilization units are literally part of the Iraqi armed forces. That's how big they are. They had to integrate them into in an official capacity. And so when we talk about fighting ISIS, the U.S. is not fighting ISIS. The U.S. helped create ISIS. The U.S. has helped these terrorist groups to flourish. The ones who are actually fighting ISIS are Syria, the Hashd al-Sha'bi, or PMU, the Russians, Iran, Hezbollah. These are the people who actually fought ISIS. Because once they entered the war, well, guess what? That turned the tide, right? In 2018, you had these jihadist groups on the doorstep of Damascus. I mean, just before that. But when we talk about Jobar, for example, the Syrian army wouldn't have been able to do that in 2018. And when the Russians entered in 2015, 2016, everything changed, right? So Aleppo, they had a major victory there. And Damascus was about to fall, and it didn't. So, the U.S. just uses this excuse to fight ISIS. They're not fighting ISIS at all. It's just to plunder the oil in Syria and keep Iraq under occupation so they can antagonize Iran because, right, they share a border. And when it comes to Syria, this is the funny thing because if you go on Twitter, they even have an account. The U.S. occupation in Iraq even has a Twitter account, Operation Enduring Freedom, just the most corny names you can think of. And what do they say? They say that, we're here to fight Daesh. We're here to fight ISIS. In Syria, they don't even say anything. They don't even have some pretentious bullshit excuse. They're just in Syria. right? They're just in Syria. And that's one of the reasons they don't like Trump. Not because he's different from them, but because he's a loud mouth. And he said, we're keeping the oil. So, he's just as much a thief as other American presidents. And he's just as much an agent of corporate America. But he just says, the quiet part out loud. So they're taking the oil. They're not even pretending to fight ISIS in Syria. And if they're so good at it, like, explain one thing to me. Why does ISIS continue to exist? Why do they keep finding new leaders? Obviously, the strategy isn't working. What did work, however, is the resistance pushing all of these terrorists into Idlib. That worked. And that's why when you looked at a map of Syria a few years ago, half the map was black under ISIS. It's not anymore. And that's not because of the Americans. The Americans' idea of fighting ISIS, do you know what they did? Look at Fallujah in Iraq. Look at Mosul. They carpet bombed these cities. Carpet bombed them. And it's again this paradox where it's like, it's not okay for Russia and Bashar al-Assad to kill civilians while they're fighting terrorists, but it's okay and it's normal. It's normal for the United States to kill civilians while fighting terrorists. And it's killing mostly civilians. It's not a few, as if that's acceptable, right? As if the U.S. has any business killing anyone in this part of the world or anywhere outside its borders. But it's normalized. Like, yeah, of course there's collateral. We can't do anything. It's just, it's the way it is. And we minimize civilian casualties. No, not really. Not really. Right? So this is, again, a double standard in the media, how they demonize Russia and Syria. And most of the time, it's not even true. Like, we literally have proof of these false flag attacks, whether it's chemical weapons or otherwise. And so they come in and act like they're doing good. They're doing some kind of good for the region. They're not. They're not. Absolutely not. Pookie says, what are your perspectives on... I'm not sure what JRE and JD... Joe Rogan experienced Jimmy Dore? Did I get that right? What are my perspective on their vaccine thoughts? I don't know what their thoughts are on that. I have not been keeping up with any of this. So I don't know what to say. You guys should tell me what it is, or give me time at least to look into it. But I have no clue. I will say one thing though, regardless, which is separate from this, and it's kind of a general thing, because when it comes to liberals who are demanding censorship, I find it interesting that the loudest voices who are arguing for big tech censorship are the same voices who lied to start the wars in Iraq and in Afghanistan and Syria and Libya and so on. So these corporate outlets, these bodies, these people demanding censorship of independent media, whoever it is, right? They do this by demonetizing us on YouTube, trying to deplatform people who are against Israel. It could be for whatever reason. But the loudest voices are themselves the biggest perpetrators of misinformation, of disinformation, the biggest liars. So surely you can see the hypocrisy in that. It's a staggering, blinding hypocrisy. The things that are said by independent media when we're covering whatever it is, whatever issue, it pales. It's nowhere near as potent, nowhere near as dangerous as what they say in the media. They will come up with the most outrageous lies to justify murdering people. I mean, just look at yesterday, right? When they come in and say that, well, this ISIS guy blew himself up, and then when they're asked for evidence, they have no proof. So they kill civilians, and then they expect you to take their word for it that it was totally ISIS' fault and not the Americans' fault. And what did they do a few months ago in Afghanistan? They wiped out an entire family in the name of fighting terrorism. They're not fighting terrorism. They just murdered a bunch of civilians. So, thankfully the media did their job back then, but there's certain things like Russiagate, like the anthrax letters, the WMDs, wars that are, the effects, we're still feeling those effects right now of the Iraq war and the war on terror. That hasn't ended. And these people who lied about these monumental issues, who made these, enormous lies, and went along with them, they have the stones to come and talk about censorship now and demand that people be deplatformed or demonetized or whatever it is. If you're going to demonetize people on social media or online because they're dangerous or you don't like their views, I mean, you guys should be the first to go in legacy media. CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, these people have helped to murder millions of people. The BBC, all of these, ITV, Sky News, they're guilty of a lot of murders, and then they have the stones to talk about censoring people. What? Look at what you've done. You're dangerous. It's not even comparable. So just look at the hypocrisy, right? It's a real blinding hypocrisy that the loudest ones are themselves dangerous. Kate says, why is there no condemnation from the UN or EU? The USA bombed a sovereign nation, Syria. And they don't care. Israel bombs Syria every week, basically, and I don't care either. They don't care. Well, the only reason they want to talk about Syria is to demonize it. They don't care that it has its sovereignty violated. It's the United States and Israel are basically abusing the self-defense under, what is it, Article 51, 52 in the UN Charter, basically that, they claim that it's in self-defense that they're bombing Syria and so on. You don't have the right to do that. You have to go to the UN first. And you can't just abuse this and claim it's self-defense. They always do this. It's not self-defense. Syria is defending itself from you, not the other way around. So, it's obscene. It's really obscene. And like I said, the EU and the UN are useless. What are they going to do? They're not going to do anything. Scott asks, what is Iran's relationship like with Syria? Hopefully Venezuela and Cuba will help Syria rebuild in defiance of U.S. tyranny. It's a good relationship. Iran and Syria, actually, it goes quite a ways back. And I mean, I don't need to tell you that Iran and Syria, we're talking about places that are thousands, literally millennia. They have civilization that goes back millennia. But in modern politics, if you look at, for example, when Saddam attacked Iran with U.S. weapons, German weapons, chemical weapons, 1980 to 1988, when he did that, Syria actually helped the Iranians, right? And this was kind of like the same thing, I think, wasn't it with Kuwait? When Saddam invaded Kuwait, Syria was also against that. But my point is, with Iran, they provided Iran with missiles. So they were on the side of Iran, even though technically speaking, again, this is just on paper, Syria and Iraq were both Ba'athist. Yeah, by name, but they weren't exactly practicing or implementing the same kind of Baathism, that's for sure. So again, that's a whole other story. But just because they had the same party name and supposedly the same ideology doesn't mean they were allied. On the contrary, there were many times where there was a rift, shall we say. But yeah, Iran's relationship is very good with Syria, especially now. You can see Iran is sending Syria lots of fuel, supplies. So it's not just military aid, it's also for the people to circumvent sanctions. And I think Cuba sent 200,000 of its doses of its vaccine, because the Cubans, they made their own one. They sent 200,000 doses to Syria, I think, just recently. And I really feel like we're shifting towards a more multipolar world. And it is nice seeing, Cuba, Venezuela, Syria, Iran coming together and forming this anti-imperialist bloc. It's very important. It's very important because everyone is helping, every country is helping the other out. It's very good. It's the only fix. It's the only solution. honestly. So guys, I haven't plugged the show. I'm just gonna plug it now. I keep forgetting we have a store, we have merch, but I'll get to that in a second. Anyway, if you want to support the show, you can donate monthly for as little as €1, $1, whatever, a month, and I will play a crab dance for everyone who joins on Patreon. So the link is below. It's patreon.com/RichardMedhurst, and if you want to donate just once on PayPal or Venmo or CashApp, you can just scan the QR code with your phone camera, with the camera app, and donate on there. Especially if you have any questions or comments, I can read them out too. Although I read them out in both chats, so it doesn't matter. But that's one way to support the show. And you guys should also sign up on Rockfin. You know, Rockfin is like YouTube. So, for example, right now I'm live streaming on both YouTube and Rockfin. It's free. You just have to make an email account to watch the videos, but it's free. It doesn't cost you anything, and I put all the segments and all the live streams on there. And it's good to have an alternative to YouTube. How many subscribers do we have on Rockfin now? We're doing quite good, huh? Let me see. I'm very happy with that. Let me see how many we have. I remember being stunned last time. I thought it was something minuscule. Then you guys blew me away. I was like, what? So let me see over here. Wow. 16,000 on Rockfin. That's incredible. So if you haven't signed up on Rockfin, please do. Again, it doesn't cost you a penny. And it's good to have a backup to YouTube because they're censoring us all the time. Whether it's through the algorithm, or you guys remember last year I got demonetized, which is, you know. So yeah, definitely go make an account on there. It's free. It doesn't cost you anything. rokfin.com/RichardMedhurst. All the links are below. And we have a store. So I keep... I didn't even remember to... Like, I had forgotten to even link this on my website. So I've done that now. If you go to store.richardmedhurst.com, you can find all the gear. And I remember because of Mona, she was in the chat earlier, and she reminded me of all the cool things she helped me design. So here's Uncle Joe's Rainbow Coalition Death Cult, which is, I mean, I love that design. I really do. I imagined it, and I came up with it, and Mona, she basically drew it for me. I think it's hilarious. So get anything you like. It supports the show. And if you want, you can donate on GoFundMe as well. I'm just trying to spell out all the options for those of you who want to support. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You know, this goes a long way and helps keep independent media independent. Desert Mantis says 16,001. I signed up the other day. Lovely. That's great. That's great. So I'm always happy. You on Rockfin, you can donate like $9 a month or something. That, like, if you pay $9 a month, you get the premium of Rockfin, which is for every single channel. So you have other people like Graham Elwood, who else is on there? Kevin Gostola, the Grayzone, I think, you know, everyone, all your favorite leftists, they're also on Rockfin, and then you will get to watch their premium. I don't do premium. I don't believe in paywalls, really. I just feel like everything should be free. And if you want to support, then thank you. But I don't believe in paywalls. But that is the advantage of it. You get to support the show here and watch everyone else's premium. So, you know, it's like Netflix for politics. It's pretty cool. So yeah, I think that's about it. Again, thank you so much for supporting independent media. I really appreciate it. If this is your first time watching, or it's not your first time watching, thank you for subscribing and hitting the bell icon, the bell button, whatever. So I will see you guys very soon. I'll have all these segments up, and you should also watch my new episode on these refugees in Australia. I interviewed 2 of them. I'm going to upload the interviews here. It's horrible. It's really like, it's the worst. I don't know if any country treats refugees as bad as Australia. Again, I don't know if I'm exaggerating, but it's really bad. I struggle to imagine what could be worse, because shipping refugees off to an offshore detention is just vile. This is so barbaric. So, it's heartbreaking. It's really heartbreaking. When you hear these guys' stories, like how they've been locked up for 8 years, they're still there. Like I interviewed one of them in detention, right? It's really heartbreaking. Connie says, it's another reason why I wish I could contribute more. We love you and appreciate you. Well, I appreciate the sentiment. That's more than enough for me. Thank you. And thank you, Screw Google. Thank you, Cortez. Thank you, Holly. And Lauren says, hi, Richard. I only came on here a short while ago just to say a big thank you for all you do, including your support of Julian Assange and so much more. You're brilliant. Warm wishes, Lauren. Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I'm humbled to see these things. Thank you so much. Scott is asking, what turned the U.S. against Assad? Was he attempting to keep resources in-house? Well, the thing with resources in Syria, Syria has oil. And let me just explain this to you. For Syria's economy, yes, the oil is important. But if you compare Syria's oil output to other countries, it's not that big, right? So Syria is not even in the top 10 oil producing countries. So it's not just about that. But by stealing the oil or occupying the oil, it cuts off a stream of revenue for the government and by extension the people. It's not hurting Bashar al-Assad because 25% of Syria's revenue is oil, right? 25% of government revenue comes from oil. So just, that alone, never mind the war and the other sanctions, you can imagine what effect that has on the country. And the main reason, I think, and I don't think it's just resources. I think it's because Syria is a country that does not make peace with Israel, right? There are no ties. There have never been any ties between Syria and Israel. Syria refuses to recognize Israel and supports the Palestinian resistance. Syria supports the Lebanese resistance. It supports Hezbollah. And Syria is with Iran. So, and Russia. So just by virtue, it's basically guilty by association. So, in Syria, you would have weapons coming through or just other means of support for the Lebanese resistance, the Palestinian resistance. Of course, because, that Syria actually stands for something. It actually believes in something. And Syria, you have to remember, has been colonized many times, right? By many civilizations, Romans, Greeks, French, Ottomans, and many more. And so coming out of the 20th century, as a French colony, as a French mandate, same thing, whatever they call it, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, you had a lot of anti-colonial movements, right? And Syria played a very important part in that because you saw Egypt and Syria forming one country, Libya and Egypt and Syria almost formed another country, and so there's a very strong sense of Arab unity. That's why when you look at Syria's official name, it's not Syria, it's the Syrian Arab Republic, the Syrian Arab Army. It's very important because that we emphasize that. There's a proverb in Arabic which is that a phrase that Syria is the beating heart of Arabism. So it's again, I don't know if every single person in Syria would agree with that, but certainly the majority. Absolutely. There's very strong anti-colonial sentiment, anti-Zionist, and for good reason. Unfortunately, some other countries like the UAE or Bahrain, I'm not talking about the people there, but specifically the governments, look at what they did, normalizing ties. But when the Israelis were visiting Bahrain, people protested, right? Because the people are against that. And so the thing with Syria is that Syria has refused to bend the knee. It's refused to go along with Western institutions. Keep in mind, Syria, correct me if I'm wrong, Syria had no international debt. So the Western corporations, they want to take over Syria's market. And in one way, yes, it's akin to taking over the resources, because if you control the markets, you control the country. And so that's always been a big foreign policy objectives for American corporations, is that they want to take the markets and monopolize the markets of other countries. And so if you as a country, you're socialist, and you're anti-Zionist, and you refuse to let American banks and corporations take over your market, this is very bad. You're going to get the axe at one point, you know? You're going to get the axe sooner or later. That's what it's about. It's one of the main reasons. I know people say that it's also about a pipeline. They wanted to build a pipeline that goes through Syria, and Syria didn't want it. I mean, maybe that could be part of it, but I don't think it's the main reason. And even the Israelis were confirming this, because they said that they offered Bashar al-Assad peace. And what did they say? They said in a way like, if he had accepted to normalize ties with Israel, Syria wouldn't be in the current situation. And we know Israel is involved. They've been helping al-Qaeda. They bomb Syria every week. Of course they have a hand in this. You know, don't you think it's a coincidence that al-Qaeda and ISIS never touch Israeli targets, never touch an Israeli embassy, never touch an Israeli citizen, never touch Israel? I'm not saying they should, but I'm just pointing something out. It's funny, right? It's an interesting paradox, because usually you should be defending Palestinians as an Arab, and you know, these people like al-Qaeda and ISIS, they claim that they want to create a caliphate and they're against imperialism and all this stuff. You know, one of the reasons Osama bin Laden was attacking America is because of the American bases in the region, in the Holy Land, right? But they don't mind Israeli occupation, apparently. Interesting. Scott says, what does the Assad government think about Russia's relationship with Israel? Shit, man, I don't even know what to think about that. I have no clue what the Assad government thinks about it. I think Russia acts as a good mediator. Sometimes there's no mediation between Syria and Israel. I mean, in general, like with the US, for example. So even if, for example, Syria and the US, they're not officially at war, but even though they don't have ties at the moment, or any semblance of actual relations, Russia acts as an intermediary between them, and that fills some, you know, that meets some needs. But I don't know about Israel. I don't even know how to answer that. If I recall correctly, I think Russia was the first country to recognize Israel. Which, again, I mean, you could explain it in one sense, because there are a lot of Russian Jews who went to Israel, to Palestine. You know, again, correct me if I'm wrong, I know most Israelis are not from Palestine, I know that, but a lot of them are from Eastern Europe, from Poland, Ukraine, Russia. So that's maybe one reason, you know, that it was the first to recognize Israel as a country. But I don't know how they reconcile it with Syria right now. But it's a good question. In any case, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Thank you for supporting the program. Again, even if you're donating or just liking the video, just commenting, it helps with the algorithm. If you're watching on replay, let me know that you got this far. Sound off in the comments, and let me know that you got this far. Let me know what your favorite segment was and what you'd like to see me talk about more. Because, you know, we touched on a lot of topics. We touched on, I don't even remember. We touched on Ukraine and Russia. We touched on ISIS, right? The ISIS leader being killed. We touched on Iraq, the U.S. occupation in Iraq. We touched on sanctions in Syria. So let me know what you'd like me to focus on more, even though I kind of, you know, I keep it diversified naturally. But yeah. Thank you, Steve, for the donation. Thank you very much. Pookie says, MRE interest is unspoken ally between Saudi and Israel. I'm always trying to figure out the acronyms. Hold on a second. Did you mean to type MRE, or did I just not get it? I don't get it, Pookie. I'm sorry, but thank you for the donation. John Doe says, sorry, Richard, I will have to watch the replay too late tonight. That's okay. That's good. Janny says, good people in the chat and love watching Richard. This is my favorite stream. It's important to know what is happening in the world outside our bubble. Thank you. That makes me very happy to hear that. Thank you. I'm happy you enjoyed it. Oh, Pookie says, more interesting. Is that what you meant to say? More interesting is the unspoken alliance between Saudi and Israel. Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, it's just a question of time before Saudi Arabia and Israel normalize ties on the, you know, on the surface. They've already done this under the table. This is well known. And this is, you know, the UAE and Bahrain, that was the first step. You're going to see Saudi next. That's I wager it's Saudi next. So, no, it's okay, Pookie. It took me a moment to get it. I appreciate the question. It's a very good comment. And, you know, Saudi Arabia used to have some balls. In 73 over the Yom Kippur War, you know, Saudi Arabia, you know what they did to oil prices, right? In support of the Palestinians. That Saudi Arabia is gone. Unfortunately, now it's a client state. Steve, thank you so much for your comments. Thank you, everyone. It was a great live stream, great talking to you. Thank you so much for being here, for tuning in, for liking, commenting, subscribing, supporting the show. I appreciate every single bit of it. All the segments will be up shortly, and thank you for tuning in. I'll leave the donation screens up if you want to donate, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Ma'as salama. Bye-bye.